May we start? Assalamu alaikum, willkommen, hello, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Zainab Badawi, and it is my great pleasure, privilege and honor to be the presenter of the Sudan Partnership Conference. As a proud daughter of Sudan, it's just absolutely wonderful to be with you, because I know that this conference is something which we hope will bring the peace and prosperity to the people of Sudan that they deserve. We want to make sure that the revolution which took place last year, that the momentum is maintained. Now, before I continue, I would like to invite the Foreign Minister of the Federal Republic of Germany, Mr. Heiko Maas, for his words of welcome. Minister Maas.
Thank you very much, Zainab, and a very warm welcome to all of you, also from my side. And it is really great to see that so many nations and organizations have followed our invitation in these trying times. And a special welcome and a big thank you goes to my friends and co-host, Prime Minister Hamdok, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and to Josep Borrell, the High Representative and Vice President of the European Union. Your attendance underlines the importance that we all attach to a peaceful, prosperous, and democratic Sudan. And so does the financial assistance that we will be offering to Sudan and its people today. So let us begin our work, but before we start with the first session, please join us for a short video.
So thank you, Foreign Minister Maas. And actually, this short video is going to set the scene for our discussions, to just really remind you about those historical events which took place in the Sudan and which we hope will transform the future of the country. Here is the scene setter. There was jubilation and celebration across Sudan in April last year. The peaceful revolution, which began in December 2018, had removed General Omar al-Bashir after 30 years in power, though hundreds had paid with their lives. The world had watched nervously and applauded the people, especially the women and girls who had stood bravely and defiantly for freedom in the face of oppression. They are now instrumental in shaping the country's future and have key roles in the transitional government, which also reflects Sudan's diverse ethnic makeup. The governing Sovereign Council and Cabinet of Ministers was set up as a result of the historic power-sharing agreement between the military and civilians. This is a partnership with the common goal of ensuring there will be a transition to democratic elections after 2022. The civilian Prime Minister, respected economist Abdullah Hamdok, and his team are confronted with immense challenges, exacerbated by the coronavirus crisis. Peace and justice must be delivered to people who have endured conflict, deprivation and marginalization in regions such as Eastern Sudan, Darfur, the Nuba Mountains, Kordofan and Blue Nile State. Sudan needs to reverse decades of corruption, political and economic mismanagement. The transitional government has already introduced reforms in the judiciary and civil service, an overhaul of the security sector, new laws on media freedom and protection of ethnic and religious groups. There are comprehensive economic reforms for greater transparency and accountability in public funds and national resources, and moves to address the $60 billion debt. But conditions are tough. Inflation is well over 100% and rising.
and Sudan is hampered in attracting foreign direct investment because financing impediments from the past continue to leave it financially isolated. 60% of the population live in poverty and lack basic goods and services. However, with support from its partners, Sudan can look over the horizon to secure the demands of the revolution for freedom, peace and justice, and claim its rightful place in Africa and on the world stage.
So, an overview there of just what is at stake, and that is the reason why we are all assembled today from so many parts of the world. As Foreign Minister Mas said, there are co-hosts of this Sudan Partnership Conference, and it now gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Abdullah Hamdok, the Prime Minister of the Sudan, and Mr. Hamdok, I want you really, in your opening remarks, to tell us just what this conference means for the people of Sudan. So I'm hoping that we can get through to Khartoum, to Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok. I mean, obviously, this is the new world now that we're having to rely on connections to to places, and sometimes the technology can let us down. Let me just see if we can, in a moment, raise the line, the connection to Khartoum. So it seems that, hello, Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, can you hear me? All right, so I think if we cannot get through to Khartoum just now, what I will do is move on to our next.
Zainab, I can.
You're here. Good, excellent. Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, the floor is yours, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zainab, and good afternoon, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellency Heiko Maas, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Germany, Excellency Joseph Borrell, High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Excellencies, distinguished participants and delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government and people of Sudan, allow me to express my thanks and deep gratitude to our esteemed partners and friends, with a special thanks to our co-organizers and co-hosts, Germany, the EU, and the UN. And very special thanks to the people and government of Germany for hosting this meeting. As it has been expressed in the opening video, this conference signals the strong and full return of Sudan to the international community. You would agree with me, the conference concept itself has evolved through time from the conventional conference of donors conference to the partnership conference. This is not just change of semantics. We mean it. Sudan look forward to the rest of the world for a partnership that is built on mutual accountability, on respect, a partnership that goes both ways. And we are looking to the rest of the world for precisely that. Sudan is passing currently through transitions, transitioning from war and conflict, from economic collapse to hopefully prosperity, from authoritarianism to democratic governance, and from isolation, international isolation, to relinking to the rest of the world. Allow me briefly just to outline the priorities of the transitional government. These priorities have been informed largely by the rather dear slogan of the revolution: freedom, justice, and peace. It includes peace, addressing the economic crisis, democratic governance and rule of law, recovery of the stolen assets, just and well-deserved representation of women, balanced foreign policy, and addressing unemployment, just to mention a few. We have made some progress in the last 9 months of the age of this government, but let me just flag 2 milestones in this journey. We made, I think, good progress in the peace process, and we hope in not a distant future, probably in a matter of weeks, to sign an agreement with the Revolutionary Front, which will pave the way to addressing the long-awaited peace for our people and address the suffering of our people in the IDP camps and the refugees. We also reached an agreement with the IMF on the staff monitored program, which is going to address far-reaching economic reforms, and our Minister of Finance will address that. I do not want to portray a rosy picture. Far from that. You know so well, any transition is messy, it is non-linear, has so many challenges. But let me just mention a few of them. I think we have to manage expectations of our people. Rightly so, they have very high expectations from this revolution. Creating broad-based alliance for the economic reform program. You know so well, economics and politics has to be aligned. This is not an easy job. We are working on that. Getting it right in the peace process, addressing the debt issue, but also, like the rest of the world, as if we do not have enough challenges in our plates, we were hit with this COVID-19. We have to grapple with its challenges and consequences. We are here today to engage in an open exchange of views and on the nature of the political, technical, and financial support by all our partners for the transitional government to effectively and robustly achieve its mandate in terms of peace, democratic transition, and economic stability and recovery through a comprehensive, homegrown, and I stress this, a comprehensive, homegrown policy reform agenda that lays the foundation for sustained and equitable development and transformation. And we hope in this aspiration and probably the expectations of our people to address a number of issues. Let me just flag some of them. First, we would like through this process to be able to revive the productive sectors of our economy. Sudan is a very rich country. Getting it right with our partners, we will be able to rekindle this and ignite it. We also hope to achieve inclusive and sustainable peace. You would agree with me, without peace, there will not be sustained democracy or sustained development. We hope to address issues of job creations, particularly among our youth, the young people who gave this country its hope and its future. We owe it to them to create that environment that will tell them there is hope in the country, that they can stay here, there is future for them, rather than taking this very serious and dangerous journey across the Mediterranean. We want them to stay here and build this country with us. And then support the education and health sectors. You know so well the human development factor in the development process at large. We hope also through this process we'll be able to support our families that will be affected by the economic reform program, and also my colleague, Minister of Labor and Social Development, will address this. We hope through this process and partnership to address our debt issues. We have a mounting debt of about 60 billion. This partnership will help us reach some kind of a debt forgiveness, restructuring, and we hope to benefit from the HIPC process, which Sudan was not able to be part of that for a long period of time. Of course, there are other technical issues linked to the statistics, data, the census, and all this. But again, this partnership will help us address the COVID. To conclude, Sudan, if we are getting it right in Sudan, it has a strong spillover effect. We are in a region that is riddled with conflicts and war, but Sudan brings hope in this region, with its geographic location at the crossroads between the Middle East and Africa, neighboring 7 countries. I think we are looking in this region for a potential success story. We expect from our partners to help us having a successful transition, which will go a long way in addressing this. Thank you, Zen.
Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok. So everybody, a rallying cry there from the Prime Minister of the Sudan for the technical, political and financial support that the country really needs so it can be a beacon of hope. It's my pleasure now to introduce another of our co-hosts, His Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Mr. Guterres, please give us your perspective from the top of the United Nations. Thank you.
Well, dear Sudanese friends and dear friends of Sudan, this is a very emotional moment for me. I have, since many years ago, a love affair with the Sudanese people. I was High Commissioner for Refugees for 10 years. The first operation in the world of the UN High Commission for Refugees was in Sudan. And I visited in Sudan refugees from Chad, from Eritrea, and from South Sudan, and I witnessed the enormous generosity of the Sudanese people. In a world where so many borders were closed, the Sudanese borders were always opened, and the Sudanese opened the doors of their houses and their hearts, and they shared everything they had, and sometimes they even shared what they wouldn't have. And this generosity I also saw in the resilience and in the courage of Sudanese refugees abroad and the people internally displaced by conflict inside Sudan. And that resilience and that courage was always for me extremely inspiring. It is a wonderful people, a generous people that deserves full solidarity. And it's also emotional for me because I lived in my country, in Portugal, another democratic revolution, another peaceful revolution. But I can tell you, it's a very risky situation. We were several times risking to lose our democracy and to go back into an authoritarian situation in Portugal. And we avoided it thanks to the determination of the Portuguese people, and we see the same determination in the Sudanese people, but we avoided it with enormous support of the international community, political support and financial support. And that's exactly what we are today here for. We need to mobilize massive political support of the international community to Sudan, to the democratic transition in Sudan, to the implementation of the constitutional declaration, but we need to mobilize massive financial support to Sudan at the present moment. It doesn't make sense to consider Sudan in any list of states sponsoring terrorism. Sudan doesn't sponsor any terrorists. We need to remove any hiccups that still exist between Sudan and the international financial institutions due to the past, in relation to which the Sudanese people is totally innocent. And we need to be able to fully mobilize the support of the different member states that can help Sudan at the present moment. And it's not a matter of generosity. It's a matter of enlightened self-interest. It's not only because the Sudanese people deserve it. It's because the world needs a stable Sudan, a democratic Sudan. It is a factor of democracy and stability in Africa and in the broader Middle East. And so, from the point of view of the United Nations, I would like to see all nations united in support to Sudan, the Sudanese people, in this extraordinary moment where the Sudanese have demonstrated the inspiring qualities that I would say all of us must fully admire, and all of us must fully feel it is our obligation to support.
Secretary General, thank you so much indeed for your heartfelt message of support there, and reminding everybody this is not only helping the people of Sudan, but that people are acting out of enlightened self-interest in supporting the Sudan. And may I thank you as a Sudanese myself for your warm words about the generosity and the spirit of the people, and it's something I echo. And I also know that the UN family, UNICEF, WFP, UNDP have really been, running that extra mile with all the work that they are doing in Sudan. So we salute the efforts of the whole UN family. Thank you so much indeed, Secretary General. May I now re-invite the Foreign Minister of Germany, Heiko Maas. Please, if you could give us your opening remarks. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Zainab, again. And yes, let me tell you something about my experience with Sudan. When I visited Khartoum last September, I met Prime Minister Hamdok and the head of the Sovereign Council, General Burhan. But I also had the opportunity to sit down with the young women and men in the streets of Khartoum. They had just brought down one of the most oppressive dictatorships in the world. Some of them told me about their struggle against Bashir's security forces and about their dream of a free, stable, and prosperous Sudan. I left Khartoum convinced that we, the international community, have a responsibility to stand by people of Sudan and their peaceful revolution. Not just as a responsibility towards Sudan itself, but also as a beacon of hope for all countries and people around the world who drew hope and inspiration from what they saw in Khartoum. And Prime Minister Hamdok, Abdallah, you have done a remarkable job of leading the country through the transition period so far. In our discussions, you described the almost impossible task ahead of you, rebuilding your country, ruined by the former regime, and at the same time, leading it back into the international community. I offered you Germany's full support, and my colleague Gerd Müller will offer more details on this later. The essence is, with today's conference, we want to make good on our promise. We want to show that we are together with Sudan. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the transitional government had reached a crucial point in the transition process. Peace negotiations with armed groups are making progress, and important economic reforms are underway. But their negative effects on the population have to be mitigated. Therefore, we are also working with the international financial institutions to offer their support to Sudan and to move towards eventual debt relief. Today's conference marks the beginning of an enduring partnership to accompany Sudan throughout this transition period, politically and financially. So, ladies and gentlemen, politicians and diplomats are constantly looking for a chance to build lasting peace and stability. Sudan is our chance, and today we can show it by standing with the new Sudan and its people. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Minister Maas, for indicating that Germany is in for the long haul with Sudan in this very important journey throughout its transition. It's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Josep Borrell, who is the High Representative for the European Union, to tell us what's being done at that level. So, Mr. Borrell. Josep Borrell, is the High Representative on the line with us, please? Josep Borrell?
Yes, I'm here.
That's good. Hello.
I'm here.
Thank you so much indeed. Please tell us what your perspective is there from the European Union.
Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to start paying tribute to the Sudanese people, women and youth in particular, who fought for peaceful change and for the ideals of freedom, peace, and justice. During my visit to Sudan last February, engaging with members of the civil society and students at Khartoum University, I was struck by their resilience, aspirations, and determination. It is thanks to their effort and sacrifices that we are facing a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring Sudan back on track in terms of peace, democratic governance, and economic recovery. Sudan is today a light of hope in Africa. And the transition process towards a fully democratic dispensation needs to be strongly supported and carefully nourished. We cannot fail to the Sudanese people. I want to acknowledge the leadership of the Prime Minister Hamdok. All actors and political forces should align themselves in support of the Prime Minister. I call on the military to protect and support the transition. I call on the armed groups not to miss this opportunity to be part of the new Sudan. I call the forces for freedom and change to maintain unity and cohesion on the road to reforms and elections. This altogether should allow for the swift establishment of the Transitional Legislative Council and the appointment of a civilian state governors as a strong democratic institutions are key to any political transition. There have been many important legal reforms already achieved, such as the criminalization of female genital mutilation. But despite the difficult context, further exacerbated by the pandemic, political reforms need to continue. This is why the European Union, besides our support to the office of the Prime Minister, will also become the main donor to the office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Sudan to ensure that the government has the necessary tools and capacities to advance on the political reform agenda. The European Union also stands ready to assist Sudan with the upcoming elections. But the economic track also needs to deliver. Unhappily, we have seen too often in the past how political transitions have been undermined by the lack of economic deliverables and dividends of the peace brought to the population. Whenever transitions have failed, the bill for the international community has been finally considerably higher. Thus, supporting Sudan's transition here and now, because now it's the time to do so, is not only an expression of solidarity, but an investment which is worth making for Sudan, for stability and development in the region, from Libya to Central African Republic, from Egypt to Ethiopia, in order to set a reference for the world. In the run-up to this conference, we have been encouraged by the commitment of the international community at large to help Sudan at such critical juncture. I call on all partners to work together to allow Sudan's transformation and its reintegration in the international financial system. Our presence today will show, I hope, our collective determination from Europe to the Gulf, from North America to Asia. For our part, the European Union will be putting forward a sizable pledge as a continuation of our strong support of the transition and commitment to improving the lives of the Sudanese population. I thank for your attention.
Thank you so much indeed, Josep Borrell, the EU High Representative, there, including welcoming remarks by the co-host. Thank you for reminding us how there is this approach, how the political and economic reforms agenda are inextricably two sides of the same coin. So we are now moving to the session, a different session of this landmark partnership conference, where we're going to be hearing statements of support, because as you all know now, this reformist agenda in Sudan needs support from its partners and friends. And so I would like to start with the first of many, and please, everybody who is speaking, I ask you with great respect to please adhere to the time slot, because there are so many people who want to speak, and we're delighted about that, but they will not get a chance if you overrun your allotted time. So please, with that in mind, I'd like to welcome Mr. Ismail Chergui, who's Commissioner for Peace and Security at the African Union. So your brief comments, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. Pleasure to see you again. And I want to join you in thanking the convener of this important event, and on the name of His Excellency Moussa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the Commission, who cannot make it today, I want to say that Sudan not only occupies a special place in Africa and in our continent, not only as a founding member of Africa Union, but Sudan's diverse linguistic, ethnic, social, cultural, and religious construction is representative of the entire continent. In this regard, all political development in that country have always reflected an African spirit and have been central to our continental organization. As you are all aware, His Excellency Moussa Faki Mohammed undertook timely and many missions to Sudan, especially on the 11th of April, 10 days after the overthrow of the previous government. Furthermore, the Africa Union urgently deployed an important mediation team which worked with Ethiopia to assist the conclusion of the agreement of August 17 last year. Indeed, this agreement marked an important milestone as the Sudanese committed to a peaceful, inclusive, and democratic future. He and his team have all undertaken several missions in support of this agreement. In this regard, he met with the new leadership in Sudan and engaged the chief mediators of the Sudan peace process taking place in Juba, South Sudan. To date, the Sudanese parties have displayed commitment towards addressing the multiple challenges facing their country. Accordingly, we believe that this commitment requires urgent and firm political support from the international community in order to sustain this transition. Sudan also needs urgent economic, financial, and humanitarian support in order to its transition to be successful. The country economy remains fragile since Sudan is classified as the state sponsor of terrorism, which limits its access to debt relief and international financial aid. Nevertheless, we welcome progress made in the discussion to remove the country from this negative classification. Excellencies, the Africa Union stands ready to assist Sudan in some area to be agreed with the authorities. The area includes peace process, reform of the defense and security sector, elections, justice and humanitarian aid to refugees and displaced persons, taking into account the need for equitable representation of women and youth. Our efforts shall be undertaken in partnership with UN, IGAD, and other international partners. As part of the Africa Union pandemic resistance strategy, the Africa Union is committed to continuing and scaling up assistance in the form of epidemiologists, COVID-19 test laboratories, deployment of 100 health workers, and supplies of various sanitary equipment.
Commissioner Chair,
I'm going to conclude. More than 1 year since the signing of the agreement, I think time has come to show to the Sudanese people the dividend of peace. So time is for action. Let's all do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And on behalf of the co-host of the conference, we send our greetings to the Commission Chairman, Mr. Moussa Faki. Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to invite Dr. Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, for his brief remarks, please. And I will respectfully remind everybody to stay within their allotted time, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Excellencies,
distinguished participants, I would like to begin by commending the conveners of this High-Level Sudan Partnership Conference. I would also like to express my gratitude and appreciation to my brother, Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, for inviting me to attend. As a historical partner and goodwill neighbor, the people and government of Ethiopia have stood by Sudan during its time of challenge and transition. 1 year ago, we stood by our brothers and sisters as Sudan made a clear decision and marked a historic moment in favor of peace and stability. Since the establishment of Sudanese Transitional Government in September 2019, the government has made significant progress in implementing the transitional agenda as contained in the constitutional document. Despite the progress that the transitional government has made, the country is facing enormous challenge due to the dire economic situation in the country. It is evident that the spread of COVID-19 pandemic has also posed a challenge on the economic and social situation of Sudan, like many other countries in Africa. In order to address these pressing humanitarian needs and fight the pandemic, Sudan needs more resources than before. Therefore, I strongly believe that this partnership conference will be a very good opportunity to solicit our political and financial support to the Sudanese people to realize their aspiration of a prosperous and democratic country. I also strongly believe that this partnership conference needs to look at the lifting of the UN Security Council sanctions, in addition to other forms of support for Sudan. The commitment the government is making to peaceful transition and development needs to be supported by giving the new leadership the means to transform the life of its people, and punishing a people for past misdeeds is unjust. The Sudan has abundant resource and untapped potential, exploring various productive sectors that can create many job opportunities, and injecting them with much needed financial investment and technical expertise will open a new gateway to grow for the country. The failure to provide the much needed political and financial support to capitalize on the success thus far made may slow down the reform process, increase frustration of the public, and may lead to social and political instability. Hence, development partners, international financial institutions, and the international community at large need to mobilize the necessary political and financial support for Sudan. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, for your words as a very valued and valuable neighbour. Thank you. I am now going to invite two people to speak together, but not too much. Urpi Leinen, Commissioner for International Partnerships, and Mr. Janez Lenarcic, Commissioner for Crisis Management. So your time starts now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like first to congratulate Prime Minister Hamdok and the people of Sudan for the historical reform process that has started last year when the Sudanese people took to the streets and demanded change. A lot has been done since, but even more remains to be done. And among other things, there are still growing humanitarian needs in the country, and this could endanger the fragile transition process. For that reason, we believe that the humanitarian assistance to Sudan has to be stepped up. For this reason, we have set up, in cooperation with Sweden and with the support of France, a humanitarian air bridge also to Sudan. It is a pure team spirit exercise, European team spirit exercise, and successful expression of our solidarity. On top of that, the European Union has already announced 31.5 million euro of humanitarian aid for Sudan for 2020. We are now mobilizing an additional 29 million euro to respond to these increasing humanitarian needs, and thus the total of EU humanitarian aid for Sudan in 2020 amounts to 60.5 million euro. Now over to you, Tan.
Honorable Prime Minister Hamdok, distinguished participants and fellow colleagues, if COVID-19 has already taught us something, it is the need to work together. Team Europe stands with Africa, our twin continent, and with Sudan in its response to the pandemic. Yesterday, we signed an 11 million agreement with the government and the WHO to strengthen the national health system. Facing a once-in-a-generation opportunity, we are ready to build together with you a brighter future. Transitioning out of the 30 years of ruthless dictatorship will not be easy. However, on this rough path, you will not walk alone. Sudan will stay as a priority country for the EU for 2021 and beyond. I am glad to announce that 251 million of the EU pledge will support social and economic development efforts as well as stability and peace. 93 million will contribute to the Sudan Family Support Programme, laying the foundations of a social protection system. With the humanitarian pledge, the overall EU contribution rises to 312 million euros. History is a chain of defining moments. Now is ours. Together with the multilateral efforts and strong solidarity, we will build a better future for all people, women and youth in Sudan. Thank you. Shukran.
Shukran jazilan to you. Thank you very much indeed for the very impressive double act there from the European Union and your concrete pledges of financial support. Thank you. Well, as Foreign Minister Maas said at the outset, we're going to hear a little bit more about what Germany is giving as in its partnership statement. So may I welcome Dr. Gerd Müller, the Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. Thank you, sir.
Excellencies, Salam alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. When I visited Sudan in February, I was deeply impressed by the spirit of optimism in this country. And after talks with Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, the German government and the German parliament decided to resume our bilateral development cooperation. Germany supports the political process of transition in Sudan. Through our development cooperation, we are already implementing important measures in the priority areas of jobs and vocational training, food security, and provision of basic services. We will further expand this cooperation. Together with my colleague and friend Heiko Maas, I can commit the overall support of 150 million euro. 150 million euro for Sudan on behalf of the German government in 2020. This consists of 118 billion euro of development funding and 32 billion euro for humanitarian assistance. But it is also very important for Sudan that we have begun to assist Sudan along the road to debt relief, and we will continue these efforts. Sudan also needs the support and solidarity of the international community to tackle the COVID pandemic. You can count on the support of the German government. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much indeed, Minister Müller, and thank you again for your very, very concrete demonstration of support. May I now invite the Foreign Minister of France, Monsieur Jean-Yves Le Drian. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le Minister, thank you. Are you there? Hello, Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian from France. Hello, is France there? Thank you, Foreign Minister. I'll just give a few more seconds, and if not, we will return to the French Foreign Minister. All right, let us now try then Mr. John Barser from the United States, and he's the administrator for USAID. United States. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you so much for having me here. And in the interest of time, I will go through my prepared statement rapidly or quickly. Mr. Prime Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, the United States has long supported the aspirations of the Sudanese people to live in freedom, to enjoy ample economic opportunity, and to have a government that preserves the rights of all citizens, regardless of their faith, ethnicity, or political affiliation. For decades, we've stood with the people of Sudan through painful cycles of conflict and crises. We've provided hundreds of millions of dollars in humanitarian assistance to save lives and protect the country's most vulnerable. We've striven to address the drivers of conflict and equip communities with the tools to resolve tensions before they erupt into violence. And we've worked with civil society to expand civic space and empower citizens. We've done so because we believe in a bright and prosperous future for Sudan. For the first time in decades, that dream is within reach, but it's not guaranteed. The inspirational demonstration that toppled Omar al-Bashir's military regime were an essential first step. The lives lost during that struggle must not be in vain. Reforms to ensure citizen-responsive governance and security are vital to realize the goals of the revolution. The bold economic reforms being enacted by Prime Minister Hamdok's government are important, and they deserve commendation. Still, there's more work to be done. The transition to a civilian-led, transparent, and accountable democracy remains fraught with challenges. We, the broader international community, must continue to lend our support. The United States is committed to doing its part. Today, I am pleased to announce $356.2 million in assistance for the Sudanese people and the transitional government. That sum includes a nearly tenfold increase in our development assistance relevant to 2019. $20 million of the funding, pending notification to Congress, will go towards the Family Support Program. We will look to provide additional funding as it may become available.
I'm not.
Seem to have a little bit of an interference there. We can still hear you though, John Barnes. I think it may be France trying to get on the line, but if you just complete your statements. Thank you. You were just telling us about the tenfold increase in your assistance.
Well, we thought that was good news. We thought everybody would like to hear that.
That registered, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
So $20 million of that funding, pending notification to Congress, will go towards the Family Support Program. We will look forward to provide additional funding as it become available. Other resources will support the democratic transition process by helping to strengthen local and national institutions, address drivers of conflict, expand civic engagement, particularly among youth, women, and marginalized communities, and assist with the planning and eventual conduct of credible, inclusive, and peaceful elections. Our humanitarian assistance will continue to support programs that meet basic needs such as food, shelter, and safe drinking water. We're also providing technical assistance, including by making our experts available to government ministries. Today's conference is important, but it's just a beginning. The road ahead is long. Sudan still needs to meet the statutory and policy conditions for state-sponsored terrorism rescission. A key policy of the settlement is the settlement of claims resulting from certain terrorist actions. We will continue to work with Sudan on this. We cannot give a timeline for state-sponsored terrorism rescission, but it must be known that the United States continues to stand by the Sudanese people and government in their pursuit of a just, peaceful, and democratic transition. We call on all others to support Sudan as it progresses towards that goal. At the same time, we firmly expect Sudan to stand by its commitment to the journey ahead, as difficult as it may be. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your leadership. I know my predecessor, Ambassador Mark Green, hosted you at USAID earlier this year. I look forward to doing the same. Thank you so very much.
John Barnes, thank you very much indeed for your pledge there and also for your clarifications on US policy. I think we now can return to the Foreign Minister of France, Jean-Yves Le Drian. Are you hearing me, France? Are you with us?
France is with you through an interpreter, madam. Mr. Le Drian can hear you.
Okay.
Dear friends, a year and a half after a revolution which very much impressed Africa and the rest of the world, we still stand shoulder to shoulder with the Sudanese women and men. All the conditions are met for their yearning for freedom and democracy to translate into a political transition that could turn into a model for the region. And to succeed in all of these reforms, Sudan needs to hold good against the virus, and they need us. The Prime Minister, the people of Sudan, first of all, need us financially, and on the occasion of the meeting held in Paris on the 7th of May, we agreed to support Sudan. We shall now make it real. First of all, Sudan shall not be excluded any longer from the support that can be provided in the fight against COVID-19. Second, we shall support Sudan in all the measures that can enable some debt relief. And lastly, of course, Sudan no longer should be on the list of countries that support terrorism. It is now time to build a new relationship with Sudan. And in this period, on the 7th of May, I said that France would contribute 10 million euros for Sudan, but given the importance of the STARS program, we are increasing sixfold our support. And I'm therefore pleased to announce that France will contribute 60 million euros. That will come in addition to our bilateral efforts by way of different projects, the total between 100 being 100 million euros for Sudan. And in addition, I would like to say that we stand ready to host a support conference for support for the political and economic aspects of the Sudanese transition, a conference that could take place in Paris, and I would be very pleased to see you in person on that occasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, for your comments. If I may now just impress upon our subsequent speakers the absolute necessity of staying within their time. The Foreign Minister of France was admirable in sticking to his allotted time. So please, I ask you, would you please keep your comments as briefly as possible? With that in mind, may I introduce the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Mr. Ahmed Abul Ghad. Thank you.
Shukran, Zainab Hanem. Excellencies, the League of Arab States highly welcomes this landmark initiative in support of Sudan, its government and people. Almost 1 year has passed since the formal transition began, and Sudan has indeed achieved much progress since then, despite the immense challenges. We are all in agreement, however, that the situation remains precariously fragile, and popular expectations for greater progress and tangible improvements remain high. Our goal today is to engage and support the government of Sudan in pursuit of the priorities it has set for itself and pledge assistance for its ambitious reform programs. This must all be anchored in a sustained international commitment to stand with Sudan during the entirety of the transition and beyond, as outlined in the conference's communique and the partnership framework adopted by the group of friends. The League of Arab States has been very clear in its resolve to support Sudan throughout this process. Sudan is an integral member of the Arab League. Along with the partners, we are witness signatories to the political and constitutional declarations, and our member states are among those providing Sudan with substantial packages of assistance. We are committed to advancing our support to Sudan in implementing the remaining objectives of the constitutional declaration, providing it with any capacity building, technical and electoral support it may require, and assisting in the completion of the peace process, as outlined in our pledging document. We will continue to provide funding for development and humanitarian projects in Darfur and elsewhere via our bilateral mechanism of cooperation with the government during this year and for the following phase of cooperation that begins in 2021. We are also providing funding for COVID mitigation efforts, and we will continue to galvanize assistance from our member states and financial and monetary institutions in support of Sudan's state priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm so sorry to have to interrupt everybody, but I really am going to have to do that because we cannot get through all the names. And to remind everybody that this conference is in English, the Foreign Minister of Kuwait, please, Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Al-Sabah, your brief comments, please, sir.
Thank you so much, and it's going to be very, very brief. I would like first to thank the tireless effort of our friends in the United Nations, Republic of Sudan, and Federal Republic of Germany and the European Union for all that they have done for the friend of Sudan during the past month to turn the discussion on Sudan transition into a reality we see today, which indicates the status of the Republic of Sudan and the importance of its stability in the region and internationally. Kuwait and Sudan have enjoyed a unique and robust relationship. As a matter of fact, the first program for Kuwait Fund for Development program was in Sudan since 1962. Some 58 years later. And after more than 30 projects valued with over $1 billion, we reiterate the readiness of Kuwait Fund for future development programs in Sudan. The progress made by the Transitional Government in peace talks and ensuing discussion with the development partners in various levels herald a promising future for the Republic of Sudan and its people. Kuwait highly appreciates this essential steps and encourages the Republic of Sudan and its leadership in the various reforms that were called upon the Friends of Sudan's meeting. We also very much support His Excellency Prime Minister Hamdouk to build peace, which is conducive for sustainable economic growth. Finally, we hope that the outcome of our meeting today would usher a new era of international solidarity with Sudan. Thank you all.
Thank you. Foreign Minister, you win the prize for the fastest read partnership statement there. Thank you. And now to the United Kingdom, where I am, of course, the British government's Mr. James Duddridge, who is the Minister for Africa. Hello, Mr. Duddridge, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you very much. Prime Minister Hamdok, distinguished guests, it's just over a year since the momentous events that changed Sudanese history forever. And the UK commends the strides made by Prime Minister Hamdok's government in establishing the freedoms, peace and justice demanded at the time by the Sudanese people. Sudan's aspirations mean it's tackling its economic challenges, and I commend particularly Finance Minister al-Badawi on confronting the inflation and currency crisis head-on. Also for shifting in investments from costly, inefficient subsidies to much more people-focused investments on education and healthcare. The UK is a leading donor to Sudan. In January, with our Swedish and UN partners, we led a pledging event here in London to raise 1.3 billion US through the UN humanitarian bill. And today, I'm pleased to say we will continue to build on this long-standing relationship. The United Kingdom pledges £150 million to Sudan over the next 12 months. Importantly, this includes £80 million, roughly 100 million US in new money for the government of Sudan's family support program. We understand that new funding for the family support program is the best way to support the government's efforts to build a prosperous Sudan, connected through trade and finance to the region and indeed the world. Congratulations to the government today on the progress you've made. We now take the next step forward to build a free, peaceful and just country envisaged by the Sudanese people, and I look forward to visiting again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, James Duddridge. Thank you, Minister for Africa. Now, you mentioned Sweden there. We can, in fact, go to Sweden, to the Minister of International Development and Cooperation, Mr. Peter Eriksson. Please, your part of the statement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sudan is in the middle of a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And only 1 year ago, women and young people in Sudan took the streets demanding real political change. Since then, Sweden has been deeply involved in this democratic transition. What Sudan has accomplished on its own so far is indeed impressive. Courageous political decisions have been made. We welcome, for example, the emphasis on women's rights and representation. At the same time, severe challenges remain. The immediate humanitarian situation and food insecurity must be addressed in parallel with the long-term reforms. Sweden remains actively engaged in support of the transition. We increased our bilateral development cooperation with Sudan with 38 million euro already in December to enable timely support to the reforms, on top of our long-term ongoing development and humanitarian funding. Today, I can inform you that we are preparing for at least 20 million euro of that funding to go to the family support program. In addition, we will reallocate Sweden's World Bank donor balance accounts to Sudan, at least 700,000 euro more. And Sudan has also been hit hard by the spread of COVID-19. Sweden's support to Sudan therefore extends into humanitarian. Through close cooperation with the European Union, Sweden has carried out the European Union humanitarian air bridge to Sudan, and humanitarian supplies and medical equipment were landed in Sudan in June, and the last one yesterday. This is another signal of European Union and Sweden's solidarity with the people of Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister. So, and we thank you for your support there. Now I'd like to go to the Foreign Minister of Spain, Ms. Arantxa González Laya. Foreign Minister. Foreign Minister of Spain. Your partnership statement, please. Thank you. Foreign Minister Arantxa González, are you with us? Spain? Okay, if Spain is not with us, I will go to our next partnership statement. Spain, one more time. Okay, I'll come back to you, Spain. Can we go to the United Arab Emirates, please? And Rima Al-Hashimi, State Minister for Co-op. Up. Arantxa González is back. Spain, please, your message of partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. Greetings to the Prime Minister, Dia Abdallah. Spain, a country that saw a democratic transition just over 40 years ago, is very committed to Sudan's progress towards democracy. This is how we know that success for Sudan will depend as much on internal as on external factors. On the internal side, obviously building a constitutional consensus in view of the democratic elections, as well as improving the livelihood of the people of Sudan. This will mean economic reforms, and thus is where we know the support of the international community will be vital. We believe that the removal of Sudan from the state sponsors of terrorism list and a certain relief of conditionalities to access international funding from the World Bank and the IMF will be very important to help Sudan advance economic reforms, and we wholeheartedly support these. Being aware that Sudan's financing needs are huge, we are committed to supporting the country. This is why I would like to announce a contribution of 3 million euros for 2020, as well as our readiness to cancel Sudan's debt with Spain, $74 million, as soon as the conditions required by the Paris Club are met. In addition, we are ready to recommence our development cooperation with Sudan as a priority country as from next year. Thank you very much, and we are here to support in whichever way we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Arantxa, and thank you for mentioning there the debt issue, which the Prime Minister, of course, appealed for debt forgiveness where possible. Thank you. Let us go to the United Arab Emirates and Rima Al-Hashimi, the State Minister for International Cooperation, for the next partnership statement in this round.
Hello, Zainab. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allow me first to begin by expressing our sincere gratitude to the co-hosts of this event, to the donors and countries who believe in the pivotal time for Prime Minister Dr. Hamdouk and his government and his people. I could speak for hours about the strength of the relationship between the UAE and Sudan, the trust and the mutual respect that we have for one another, but we certainly don't have the time for that now. We remain fully committed to Sudan's success in its transition to a new era of peace, justice, and prosperity. In late 2019, as a quick and immediate response and support to Sudan immediately after the regime change, the UAE and KSA have jointly committed $3 billion, $1.5 billion each, including a $500 million deposit to support the Bank of Sudan and the importation of fuel, wheat, and inputs of agriculture. And sure enough, when the coronavirus pandemic hit, we were right where we both belonged, next to one another, and the UAE supported by sending 3 planes of medical supplies and aid to support medical professionals in Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, we are committed to support Sudan as it undertakes its transitional phase, and we're hopeful that the country will overcome its challenges through the determination of its people and the support of brotherly nations and the international community. Sudan is a beacon with its enlightened leadership, and it is absolutely critical that we continue to support her. We are hopeful that the peace process in Juba will soon conclude into a comprehensive peace agreement that ends instability. And rushing through my remarks, I will say finally that a successful path towards Sudan's recovery will only happen through investments and initiatives that supports economic growth. And it is in that spirit that we are delighted to announce that the UAE will support an investment initiative with the World Bank and with the World Food Programme with $50 million. We hope that this will help Sudan recover on its path and continue to live in prosperity, growth, and security. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much indeed, Minister there from the United Arab Emirates. Thank you so much. So that is the first round of those partnership statements. We have many, many more coming, which is a reflection of just how important this partnership conference is. I want to go for literally 45 seconds to Heiko Maas and to Abdallah Hamdok, just to get a quick, brief reaction.
Okay.
Minister Maas, just tell me very quickly how you think it's going. Hello, Foreign Minister Maas, give us a quick response, a soundbite about how you think these partnership statements are going. We don't have Minister Maas, so let me ask Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok very quickly, what's your initial reaction about these partnership statements?
Thank you very much, Zainab. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Just a very quick, rapid response, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. We are extremely delighted with the responses we are hearing from our partners and friends. This is a type of solidarity and support we are hoping for. We listen to all kinds of the right messages that are coming our way. There is a lot to be done. Not only an expression of solidarity, but an investment in the future of the region. We are very delighted. Thank you so much to our partners.
Thank you so much. And we'll be hearing some more from you, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. Thank you. Well, we heard a lot in that opening session about the family support program and just how critical it is to ensure that the really needy people in the Sudan who need assistance will get it. So we're now going to bring you a video about the significance of the family support program. So if we can please show that film. Thank you.
Sudan's transition process has reached a decisive point. International partners continue to stand by the Sudanese people and the transitional government, eager to help ensure the success of the historical transition process underway. However, Sudan has a lot of obstacles to overcome if it is to achieve the sustainable development goals within the coming decade, and progress has been substantially hindered by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
نحن النساء اللي تم حظرهم في البيوت بسبب مرض كورونا أو العدوى بتاعت كورونا، النساء قعدوا في البيت لكن اتضرروا لأنه عندهم أطفال بياكلوا وبيشربوا وما كان عندهم حاجة، اتضرروا ضرر شديد. ست شاي الشغالة دي وراها أطفال بيعيشوا بياكلوا وبيشربوا وراها إيجار بيت.
As part of its economic reforms, the transitional government is committed to the Sudan Family Support Program, which is one of its greatest undertakings.
برنامج الدعم الأسري يهدف إلى تكوين عقد اجتماعي جديد مع غالبية الشعب السوداني. هذا المشروع مشروع يتطلب تضافر وتعاون عدد من الوزارات، وهو برنامج مدعوم من المجتمع الدولي في إطار مساعدة السودان بالانتقال من دعم السلع إلى دعم المواطن. وأيضاً سيساهم هذا المشروع بصورة كبيرة جداً في دعم عملية السلام.
بفتكر إنه ممكن يكون مفيد إذا وصل الدعم للأسر الأكثر فقراً وصاحبته كثير من الضمانات والشروط في كيفية الوصول للشريحة دي عن طريق الدراسات العميقة لمستوى الفقر. في نفس الوقت بقية الدعم يتوجه في إنه يملك الأسر الفقيرة دي مهارات ومقدرات لإنه تكون عملهم أو إنتاجهم حاجة مستمرة.
This program will be implemented by the newly established Digital Transformation Agency that will deliver government support and services directly, efficiently, and transparently. Aimed at helping all families in need, it will provide a major dividend of the December Revolution.
وكالة التحول الرقمي هي وكالة معنية بإحداث نقلة نوعية في تقديم خدمات الدولة بصورة رقمية بصورة إلكترونية، وبوجود السجل المدني القاعدة الأساسية لإحداث التحول الرقمي في الدولة الآن موجودة، وجاهزية الدولة لتقديم الخدمات بصورة إلكترونية أصبحت متاحة، وبالتالي حققنا نقلة كبيرة جدا اللي هي العلاقة المباشرة ما بين الجهة الممولة والمستفيد من التمويل بصورة مباشرة.
وكالة التحول الرقمي حتساعدنا في إنه نحن يكون في تنسيق عالي، وحيكون في تأكيد لكل المعلومات اللي بتجي عشان نتأكد من نجاح أي دعم بيصل لكل السودانيين في كل بقاع السودان. بنعول عليها كتير في دعم الأسر، في إنه كيف نحن ممكن يكون الدعم النقدي المباشر بطريقة مختلفة، كيف نقدر نصل كل الناس، كيف نحن نتأكد من إنه الناس وصلها الدعم اللي نحن عايزينه.
The High-Level Sudan Partnership Conference marks the launch of the formal process of political support for Sudan's transition, backed by pledges of financial assistance so the government of Sudan can achieve its goals of democratic transition and economic reforms.
Thank you. That film was narrated by Hiba Morgan there, just telling you about the importance of the family support program. I'd now like to invite to a kind of panel a couple of the voices you heard in that film, and that's Ibrahim Al-Badawi, who pronounces his name correctly, unlike me, the Minister of Finance of Sudan, and also Lina Al-Sheikh, who is the Minister of Labour and Social Development. And also we are delighted to have with us the President of the World Bank, Mr. David Malpass, and also the head of the IMF, Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, and also Dr. Akin Adeshina, the head of the African Development Bank. I hope you're all with us. Yes, I hope you are. Are you all there?
We are all here.
Fantastic. Hello, good to see you, Kristalina Georgieva there. But in fact, I'm going to go to the Sudanese Minister of Finance first, Mr. Ibrahim Al-Badawi, and I would appreciate it if you didn't have too many prepared remarks here, but if we can have a little bit of interaction. So Ibrahim Al-Badawi, could you, obviously we all know that economics lay at the heart of the December Revolution. People were thoroughly fed up with what was going on. So just give us a brief overview of the comprehensive economic reforms that you have instigated in the Sudan.
Thank you, my sister Zainab. Let me start by saying that, led by our promising youth, the Sudanese people rose up to demand a government that can meet their aspirations, which they articulated in 3 words: freedom, peace, and justice. To fulfill the profound economic content of this iconic slogan, we reckon that our economic agenda must strive to achieve deep transitions for our economy and society, from a kleptocratic, authoritarian, conflict-ridden state to a peaceful, accountable, democratic state, from a predatory, corrupt state to a bona fide, developmental, social welfare state, from a narrow-based rentier economy to a regionally and sectorally multipolar, diverse economy, from a low productivity economy to a knowledge-based economy, but rest by educated young labor force. However, to get there, we need to be bold and take deep, homegrown, and well-communicated reforms that are also supported by the international development community. Therefore, inspired by the revolution and mindful of the sacrifices of generations, we will confront our economic challenges with decisive, comprehensive reform. In this context, we have started to reform costly and regressive fuel subsidies, which drained 38% of our budget, fueled corruption, and which were paid for by the poor and middle class through inflation. We will be reforming the exchange rate to bolster competitiveness, remove myriad multiple rates, and create the incentive for export proceeds and remittances to flow through formal channels, not the parallel market. We will bring transparent governance to state enterprises, including security sector firms, by publishing a full inventory and transferring financial oversight of all state enterprises to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. We will amend the Central Bank Act to enshrine independence, while also strengthening its capacity to focus on price stability and a well-governed, well-capitalized, and modern banking system. We will pass an anti-corruption law and create an anti-corruption commission and reform the enabling environment for business and investment. And we will transparently manage the budget, focusing on health and education, and investing in neglected and marginalized states. To accomplish this within our means, we will expand the tax base by streamlining tax exemptions and improving tax administration. The planned reform will place a burden, in fact, a tremendous burden on the Sudanese people who have already suffered. To mitigate this impact, we have introduced a highly popular and long overdue new salary structure for government employees, which, among other things, was aimed at rebuilding the Sudanese middle class. To complete the other component of this critical aspect of our new vision, we are introducing the Family Support Program that will be executed through a newly created Digital Transformation Agency, which we believe will transform overall public service delivery in Sudan to the standard of the digital revolution that started to shape the global economy. The Family Support Program, to be further elaborated by my colleague, the Minister of Labor and Social Development, would cover poor families depending on informal economic activities in the urban and rural sectors, especially in the marginalized and conflict-afflicted regions of the country. Allow me finally to say this is the first step of a journey. These reforms are also the first of several stages that will be outlined in the form of a compact to guide us as we work towards comprehensive peace and transition to democracy in just over 2 years. We look forward to your partnership every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim Al-Badawi. And we know that the state budget, obviously, so deep in the red, you're having to try to square a lot of circles with your work. You mentioned there, Finance Minister, that Lina Al-Sheikh, who is the Minister for Family and Social Development and Labour, you're the person who's spearheading the efforts towards the family support program. We saw a little bit about it there in the film, but I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about it, who you're targeting and so on and so forth.
Hi Zainab, I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Zainab and everybody. Good evening. Maybe I wanted to pick up from where my colleague Dr. Ibrahim has mentioned the journey, and I said I think it's important that we remember where, how did we start this journey, and going back to December 2018, where it actually started with a number of students, primary school students, who protested because of the shortage of bread and because of bread prices. And then again in April 2019, the people of Sudan, and that was it ignited the flames of the revolution. And in April 2019, the people of Sudan tore down a wall, a 30-year-old war that confined us to a life of poverty, strife, and misery. United in suffering, men and women of all ages and social backgrounds, that you have all seen and witnessed, took to the streets to topple one of Africa's most brutal regimes. Now we aspire to lead a new life, a life guided by the principles of freedom, peace, and justice, We want to build a nation and we wish to reunite with the world. And let me reemphasize, as members of the transitional government, before us lies a tall order. We carry the responsibility of paving the way for the fulfillment of the aspirations of an uprising that offered so much blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We remain steadfast to the cause, to lead our people along a path that would take them from poverty to prosperity and to social justice. And I guess it's been 9 months, and they've been very tough and very challenging. For us at the Ministry of Labor and Social Development, we are working hard to meet these expectations and aspirations of those millions of Sudanese who not only made the change in Sudan possible, but are now hoping and expecting to realize a democratic and peaceful Sudan, a different Sudan where the genuine civic engagement with Sudanese citizens and collaborative partnerships with international stakeholders are essential prerequisites to success. The Sudan Family Support Program, which we have listened to briefly and my colleague has mentioned, covers 80% of the population, is designed to mitigate the impact of economic reform. And we are definitely all facing economic crisis of all forms, but I think it's multiplied for us here in Sudan. And it helps us to demonstrate the values of the government and the promises that we have made. At the Ministry of Labor and Social Development, we are working together with our colleagues at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning to make sure that this ambitious cash transfer program is complementing our programs and visions for an integrated social protection. An integrated social protection program is the tool to improve the quality and stability of macroeconomic policy. It will be complemented by our efforts in institutional capacity building, in investing in our human resource development, in job creation and small and medium enterprise development. Our recent experience in distributing both in-kind and cash assistance during the COVID-19 emergency response, and I want to thank you all again for your support while we're all facing this global pandemic. We've spent 5 billion SDG so far, which were allocated to in-kind and cash support to over 570,000 families in the informal sector. We believe that this program, supplemented by the vision and the work towards an integrated social protection investment, will initiate a cycle of structural, economic, and social reforms, and will better respond to the social and economic needs of vulnerable groups of the population. It helps to coordinate interventions from different services through a multi-sectoral approach, and most importantly, ensures one entry point for citizens in need of social protection. I really believe that our people tore down the wall. We, the people of Sudan, want to lead a new life at home. We need no longer to take perilous journeys across the Mediterranean to fulfill our dream. And we mentioned dreams, I heard that 2 times today. To fulfill our dreams, because change has come home. We invite you to work together with us to sustain it so that we may see the Sudan we deserve in Africa and in the world. And I invite you to be part of our journey as we make history. Let's make Sudan a beacon of hope, and let's make it a great story of transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister Lina El-Sheikh. Let us turn then to the multilateral partners of the Sudan. David Malpass, President of the World Bank Group. You've heard there the need for the people of Sudan to have the impact of these ambitious reforms. They need to be cushioned from those. And you've heard Minister El-Sheikh there say that 80% of families in the Sudan are in need of these cash transfer programs. So I wonder if you could tell us from your perspective at the World Bank, what can you do to help realize the dreams that the Minister has so eloquently outlined there? Is David Malpass there? Okay, Kristalina Georgieva, I can see you, Managing Director of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. I mean, you know, the role of the multilateral partners is so important, but obviously in your case as well.
It's David here.
David Malpass has come back. Okay. Can you hear me, David Malpass? Did you? I said.
Yes. I can hear you, but There's a problem with the.
We've got you now, but I don't know if you heard Minister Lina Al-Sheikh and Finance presentations.
I was listening on the video. Oh, I think I'm all set now. So thank you very much. I did hear, and I want to say how powerful the conference has been so far. And I wanted to update you on what the World Bank is doing. But first, I'd like to applaud Prime Minister Hamdok, the Finance Minister Badawi, and Labor Minister Majoub, who I just heard, for the vision that they're bringing for shared prosperity for the Sudanese people. I think their new policies are vital for Sudan. The World Bank is committed to supporting Sudan's efforts. This is not a simple proposition because Sudan is in arrears to the bank, and our rules don't allow us to finance from regular funding sources. Even so, we're finding 4 ways to support Sudan now, which I'd like to go through with you. First, we expect to finance an emergency health response to COVID in July. Combining resources from trust funds that the World Bank administers, we'll be able to provide $35 million in financing for a project to prevent, detect, and respond to COVID-19. Second, at the government's request, we've been working with the government to design the Sudan Family Support Program. It's an ambitious cash transfer program. The program is costed at $1.9 billion, and it seeks to cover cash transfers of $5 per month per person to 80% of the population using digital and other delivery mechanisms. Following months of intensive technical work, it's now being piloted and readied for implementation. A key issue is ensuring the program is predictably financed and that funds are channeled as much as possible through the government. That's in order to build confidence and strengthen transparency and accountability, and also ensure the sustainability of the program. And so for this purpose, the World Bank has established a Sudan Transition Recovery Support multi-donor trust fund. It will channel partner contributions into this program, and we'll use this mechanism to strengthen the government systems and use World Bank fiduciary safeguards. The third thing I want to mention is, as early as August, we are going to provide up to a maximum of $400 million in a pre-arrears clearance grant. This would be provided through a special allocation to be approved by our shareholders to support the family support program. And in the spirit of burden sharing, our hope is that the provision of our pre-arrears clearance grant can galvanize significant donor contributions to the Sudan Transition and Recovery Support Fund that will provide the financing to give the government the highest possible chance to succeed in its reforms. And then fourth, and lastly, as you alluded, we need to work with the government to get to arrears clearance in order to unlock the significant resources that could be available from the World Bank. That's about $1.75 billion for the period up to 2023. Also, arrears clearance will unlock resources from other IFIs and would allow a HIPC decision point that would help Sudan get its large debt challenge under control. So there's several steps to be taken on this path. There needs to be a robust macro reform agenda at the government, as the government has been doing. Also, reconciling debt owed to creditors and coming to an agreement on the debt workout. Here, I'd like to point out that Sudan's external debt is large. It's expected to reach $56 billion by the end of 2020, but a large share of that debt is interest arrears caused by an accumulation of decades of compounding of interest. The process of clearing arrears is challenging, and we can't be sure of the precise timeline, but we're determined to move this along as fast as possible. Sudan is a priority for Africa and the world, and the time for action and solutions is now. So I call on countries and other international organizations to step up and give Sudan the best chance it can to succeed. The World Bank will do its part as part of the compact led by the government of Sudan. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, David Malpass, the president of the World Bank Group. So, Kristalina Georgieva at the IMF, you heard David Malpass there very clearly list a series of mechanisms, including the debt arrears process, which he says is not going to be easy necessarily. But please tell us what the IMF can do as an institution.
It is so very energizing to hear, first and foremost, the government of Sudan, but then the partners of Sudan. Actually, David Malpass and I have had some of our most uplifting conversations about Sudan, and it is indeed now the time for action. I want to make 3 points. One, about the global, regional, and domestic context for the topics we discussed today. 2, our staff monitoring program, what it is all about. And 3, how we see the next steps. So the global context, we have to recognize that Sudan is dealing with very, very heavy legacy at the most difficult of times. On top of their own situation that is dire, we have COVID-19, and we have the whole world in recession. We just updated our projections for 2020. The GDP of the world would shrink by almost 5%. And countries in the region that are important for Sudan's economy are also severely hit. Sub-Saharan Africa growth downgraded to minus 3.2%, Middle East minus 4.7%. But it is Sudan that is in the toughest of places, with projections of minus 8.4% for this year, coming on top of 2 years beforehand of a shrinking economy. So it is in this difficult time that it is so encouraging to hear the solidarity with Sudan. And I for one, think it is so wonderful that we have so many pledges to help Sudan and make it step up, which takes me to the second point, the staff monitoring program. It is all about these homegrown reforms that the Minister of Finance and Minister of Labor spoke about. What we are doing from the IMF is to put it in a 1-year clear timeline and course of actions. And what we are dealing with are not trivial matters. One, the minister talked about removal of fuel subsidies. They are sucking 10.5% of Sudanese GDP. And to open up space for social expenditures, as tough as it is, it has to be done. Secondly, we are looking into the criticality of sustained social safety nets, and David talked about it. And then we have the whole suite of reforms on governance and investment, if you wish, investment environment, revival of the economy, very tough reforms the government is undertaking. We will be there for this 1 year. We have now the staff monitoring program in place. We are going to take it to our board for approval and then stay with Sudan throughout this year. But to succeed, and this is my main point to everybody, to succeed, Sudan does need the financing we are raising at this conference. We assess the financial gap to be at least $1.5 to $2 billion for 2020-2021. This money has to be in place, because if it is not, then inflation cannot be put under control, and these reforms would not have legs. So my plea is to continue in the remaining time we have with more of these pledges, so we can get that critical transformation to move on. And as David Malpass said, once we go through this 1 year to establish track record of reforms, there is still hard work to be done on debt consolidation, on arrear clearance, and bringing 70% at least of the donors, the partners of Sudan, on page 4 HIPIC. Can it be done? Absolutely, yes. Do I get more confidence from the meeting? I do. And Zainab, I cannot think of a better person than you to facilitate this meeting. Women in yellow, I'm right there with you.
I'm wearing yellow for the son of the Sudan, you see. Kristalina
Yes, thank you.
A huge admirer of yours for many years, and we salute your support at the IMF for Sudan in its ambitious reform agenda program. I'm sure that the ministers will say that. And it's great to hear that you are confident about the highly indebted poor country track as well. We may come back for a final word, but I'd like to now invite Dr. Akin Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. And Dr. Adesina, I know you've done a lot at the African Development Bank, trying to help countries in Africa respond to the dreadful impact of the coronavirus pandemic. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you feel the bank can support the Sudan. Dr. Adesina.
Well, thanks very much, Zainab. First, let me thank you, Your Excellency Prime Minister, for inviting me to this and all of us to this meeting, and also to thank the Foreign Minister of Germany, Heiko Maas, and the VP of EU, Mr. Borrell, and all the colleagues that are here for this particular meeting. It's great to be here for two reasons for me personally. I think the Secretary General was mentioning that earlier. First is that we are all friends of Sudan, and Zainab, you're from Sudan, so we feel all at home here, about being in Sudan. Because we care a lot about Sudan. I think that's very clear from what everybody has said. But also for me personally, because in a very difficult time that you need leaders that actually have great ideas about how to come out of tough times and make economies more resilient. You could have asked for a better person than Hamdok. Hamdok is a personal friend, and he's done a great job when he was at the Economic Commission for Africa. So he has a very tough job of having to lead this transition government. So he can be sure, though, that he has very, very strong support from all of us, sadly from the African Development Bank, in addition to others, in this Herculean task that he has. Now, let me say that the African Development Bank has always been with Sudan from the very beginning. We never left Sudan one day, even throughout all the time that you have Sudan under economic sanctions. That's because we believe in Sudan. For example, let me just tell you, we have a portfolio size there of $511 million. And I just wanted to mention something to give us hope as we look at Sudan beyond sanctions. With an example for one of those, we invested in a company there called Kenana Sugar Factory. That Kenana Sugar Factory today is the largest white sugar manufacturing company in the world. And it did that under a period of sanctions. You can just imagine. We invested $135 million into private sector companies there. One is called Dow. The other one is called El Nefedi, which are big food and ag companies to be able to produce the food, because you can't build peace and security and stability on empty stomachs, right? And so we got to make sure that we actually deal with this particular issue. We launched, Mr. Prime Minister, a program in your country that is having tremendous amount of impact. It's called Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. That program has delivered well over 30,000 metric tons of certified seed for you to be able to produce wheat, which is the main staple in Sudan. Now, for those that are not from ag background like myself, let me just say what that means. It's 30,000 metric tons of certified seed is the equivalent of about 282 A380 aircrafts that you pack on a landing strip. That's just the equivalent of it. It's now being planted on over 300,000 hectares of land there. By the end of this year, we expect through that program to support Sudan to produce another 65,000 metric tons of certified seed. That will plant another 500,000 hectares. So I just wanted to say, as the Prime Minister was saying, the issue of focusing on critical sectors, it's a very, very important. Agriculture is one. I'll make 2 points before I wrap up my comments. The second one has to do with the issue of the debt. which I think David and also Kristalina were talking about. The main thing for us really is the debt HIPIC. How do you get them to the HIPIC thing? The bank, the African Development Bank, has supported 2 surveys, the national baseline household surveys to look at poverty in Sudan. We've supported it from the very beginning. And the current one that's now going into full-blown PRSP preparation, which the bank is leading, will be ready by the end of this year. And that's going to be a critical document that we all need to get into the trigger point as a precondition for the highly indebted poor country qualification for Sudan. And I think the point that Kristalina was making there about the commitment to reforms is going to be critical. We have to get the PRSP thing done and got to make sure that all the partners, all that are our friends of Sudan here, can come to the table to help in that. The last point that I wanted to make is on what David was saying on the issue of the arrears clearance. Between IMF, between us, and also the World Bank, we all work in very closely on this particular issue. The total amount that Sudan has in arrears to us is roughly about $2.7 billion. Okay, to do that, we have to set aside money to allow Sudan to clear that and rejoin the international financial community, which we all want to do. And so we've provided, from our African Development Fund, $445 million that we have for arrears clearance, which includes Sudan and Zimbabwe. And so there's competition here. It's for us on a first come, first served basis. So that can be used to support that. And we are working very, very closely with many of you, World Bank and IMF and others on this. The UK and the EU, and I'm glad that they're all here, helped us on Somalia arrears clearance. And so there's had to be a champion or champions of friends of Sudan from here that can actually help us on that particular issue. Just to close in terms of the future, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to assure you of our strong support. We're going to be providing in the next 3 years in our ADF, African Development Fund cycle, $155 million that will support Sudan. And that will include $30 million going to our board for COVID-19 support, which is the point that you were raising, Zainab. Another $15 million that will support women, small and medium-sized enterprises. And $30 million, Prime Minister, you were mentioning your statistics, that will support the Central Bureau of Statistics for agricultural census. So just to close, we are here. Be strong, be determined. I'm very sure that with all of us that are your friends here, you can be quite reassured that you will make it through this. So thank you very much. It's nice to be with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akina Deshina. And thank you also, Kristalina Georgieva and David Malpass, and also Minister Al-Badawi and Minister Al-Sheikh. We have to conclude this panel there. And I think you have heard their ministers about the support from the multilateral partners in a variety of ways, touching on debt, touching on grants, assistance for the family support programs. David Malpass mentioned 1.9 billion that's needed over 2 years and so on. So we hope that this will help you, Minister Al-Badawi, to achieve the ambitious goals that you have set out, and also Minister Lina, that it will help you cushion the blow of the economic reforms. Thank you very much indeed. Before we proceed to our next session of partnership statements, I should, by the way, apologize that we had to move to the panel discussion before we could continue with our session of partnership statements because of time constraints for some of our speakers. So profuse apologies to those of you who thought you might be speaking a little bit earlier. I will be coming to you in just a moment. But before that, I just want to play this short video because we are, after all, here talking about the people of Sudan. And it's very important that their voice is included in this very important partnership conference. So let us please hear some voices from the Sudan in this video.
أنا جيت البلد دي زمن الحرب ضربت كادوغلي ياهو جيت هنا وما لقيت لي محل نسكن وما عندي قرش نأجر ياهو جيت قعدت في الروضة دي الروضة دي كتر خيرها قعدتني هنا قريب 6 سنة وجيت معايا يتامى يالي يتامى أبوه متوفى برضه كان عسكري ياهو انضرب برضه مات في نفس المحل جيت قعدت هنا وهسي ما عندي قري ذاتي انا اجر ولا قاعده بس في الروضه دي، والروضه بقت كعبه في الخريف. الاوضه اللي قاعده فيها بتدفق، والعريشه دي برضه بتدفق، يعني ما في مهل نقعد فيه. اتمنى السلام ده يتم ونرجع مع اولادي كادوغلي، نكونوا قاعدين في امان هناك ونمشي نزرع.
يعني هسه انا داير يعني سايق العربيه دي لي 20 سنه، ليه 20 سنه عايز اغير ما قادر اغير لان الوضع الاقتصادي تعبان. فالناس هسه يعني غاز ما في، الناس صابره على الحكومه دي، الناس غاز ما في، بنزين ما في، صفوف دواء ما في، يعني الحياه دي كلها ما في. الناس يعني صابره لكن تصبر ليبتين ما معروف.
الزراعه في السودان التقليديه طبعا، فنحن بنعاني من التقاوي والجزلين، واكثر شيء المبيدات، وعندنا الري ضعيف، الآلات اللي بتروي أساسا هي ضعيفة. وزارة الزراعة لو وفرت لنا التقاوي والمبيدات والجزلين، السودان يبقى سلة العالم.
الشباب والفكرة بتاعته قبل الثورة وما بعد الثورة، ويمكن يكون النظرة بتاعته للعملية بتاعت التغيير هسي لحد هسي هي ما واضحة باعتبار انه في سنة ونص كاملة مرت كان بيحلم بانه طوالي يعني كل التصور الخطير في راسه انه انا حامشي القى وظيفة.
So a reminder there of just why we are all here today to help the people of the Sudan. They're just a snapshot from some of the 40 plus members of the Sudanese population. So let us now go back to our session of partnership statements. And I would like to invite, and I also apologize once more profusely for the delay in coming to some of these speakers. Really, it was unavoidable, and I thank you deeply for your patience. So may I call on Dr. Ahmed Al-Katan, State Minister for Africa in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Ahmed Al-Katan from Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mrs. Zainab. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي، أود أن أعرب باسم بلادي عن بالغ التقدير للأصدقاء في ألمانيا والاتحاد الأوروبي والأمم المتحدة على جهودهم المبذولة لعقد مؤتمر شركاء السودان، مؤكداً على دعم بلادي الكامل للحكومة الانتقالية في السودان واستمرارنا في العمل الدؤوب لدعم السودان وشعبه بما يحقق مصالحه الوطنية وأماله المشروعة. نجتمع اليوم بعد عام تقريبا على المنعطف التاريخي الذي بدأه السودانيون في سبيل السلام والحرية والعدالة، ويقع على عاتقنا جميعا ضرورة مضاعفة الجهود لتتمكن السودان من عبور الظروف الاقتصادية الصعبة التي تمر به والتي زادت جائحة كورونا من مفاقمتها، وتحقيق أمنه واستقراره وتبوئه لمكانه الصحيح في محيطه العربي والإقليمي والدولي. إن المملكة العربية السعودية تؤكد على أهمية تضافر الجهود لإنجاح المرحلة الانتقالية، وتثمن جهود الحكومة الانتقالية السودانية والإصلاحات الاقتصادية التي قامت بها بالرغم من التحديات الكبيرة التي تواجهها، وترى أن دعم السودان في الوقت الحالي يعتبر استثماراً هاما للحفاظ على أمن وسلامة المنطقة والمجتمع الدولي. وفي ذات السياق تثمن بلادي جهود المؤسسات المالية الدولية لأن تكون أكثر مرونة واستجابة لاحتياجات السودان والاستفادة من الآليات وبرامج المساعدات المتوفرة في نطاق مكافحة جائحة الكورونا، ونظر في البدء في عملية إعفاء الديون وإعداد برنامج خاضع لرقابة صندوق النقد الدولي في إطار مبادرة الدول الفقيرة المثقلة بالديون. كما نثمن جهود الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية في سبيل إزالة اسم السودان من اللائحة الأمريكية للدول الراعية للإرهاب، الأمر الذي يعتبر أساسياً لإنجاح الإصلاحات الاقتصادية. وأخيرا، وطالما كان دعم السودان وشعبه الشقيق أولوية ملحة للمملكة، وأننا عبر علاقاتنا الأخوية الممتدة عبر التاريخ كنا ولا نزال من أكبر الدول المانحة والداعمة للسودان الشقيق، ولقد بادرت المملكة منذ بداية المرحلة الانتقالية بتقديم الدعم للحكومة الانتقالية لتخفيف معاناة الأشقاء في السودان، حيث بلغت قيمة المساعدات المقدمة منذ عام تقريبا ما يفوق النصف مليار دولار أمريكي، شملت المساعدات الإنسانية والتنموية والاقتصادية. وستقوم المملكة بتمويل الصندوق الائتماني متعدد الأطراف القائم لدى البنك الدولي لدعم جمهورية السودان بمبلغ 10 مليون دولار أمريكي. وستواصل المملكة رفع استثماراتها في القطاع الخاص وتقديم كافة سبل الدعم الممكنة لضمان أمن السودان واستقراره وازدهاره. والسلام عليكم.
شكرا جزيلا سعادتك. And I'm sorry, I should have said, for those of you who don't understand Arabic, there was English translation, which I hope you managed to access. Thank you very much indeed. Just to remind all our speakers, please, can you stay within your time, because otherwise the microphone does cut out. So could I ask Mr. Lee Tai-ho, Vice Minister in Korea, please?
Thank you, Excellencies. With the Korean people, with our first-hand experience of achieving both economic growth and democratization at the same time, deeply share the Sudanese national aspiration for democracy and prosperity. The Republic of Korea reaffirms its commitment to support the transitional government of Sudan in its efforts for political reform aimed at shaping accountable governance, rebuilding sound public institutions, and strengthening political representativeness. Recalling that the Sudanese government has prioritized economic reform from the outset, we highly commend its efforts to take action to enhance transparency and accountability, to tackle corruption, and to eradicate unnecessary obstacles, in spite of the challenges caused by COVID-19. To further consolidate the political and economic achievements in Sudan, a full and comprehensive peace requires much attention. In this regard, we strongly support the Juba peace process and call on all parties to engage sincerely in the negotiations. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1977, the Korean government has been working on various projects with Sudan to go along with its development path. These projects ranged from accelerating sustainable agriculture to promoting resilience in local communities and to enhancing capacity in vocal education. In terms of money, they totaled roughly 54 million US dollars over the years. This year, the Korean government intends to contribute 7.5 million US dollars to support Sudan, which is comprised of 5.3 million US dollars of development funding and 2.2 million US dollars of humanitarian assistance. The humanitarian component consists of, first, 300,000 US dollars for the OCHA Sudan Humanitarian Fund. Second, in-kind contributions worth of 400,000 US dollars, such as COVID-19 test kits and facial masks through the WHO and Africa CDCs. And finally, 1.5 million US dollars through international organizations, including the WFP. The Korean government will explore the availability of additional financial support to Sudan in due course. From our own experience, we know that the road ahead for Sudan is not easy at all. However, the Republic of Korea will continue to stand by the people and the government of Sudan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, the Vice Minister there from the Republic of Korea. Thank you for your support. I would like now to go to China, to Ms. Ku Junghu, who is Special Representative for Africa. And your comments, please.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to attend today's meeting on behalf of the Chinese government. I wish to thank Germany, Sudan, the EU, and the UN for their tremendous effort in preparing for the meeting.
So due to the limited time, I would like to invite my interpreter to read from my script. So we find it very encouraging that the joint political transition in Sudan is making good progress and the nation's development is now on the right track. China and Sudan enjoy long-standing friendship and cooperation. China facilitated Sudan in establishing a complete oil industry system and delivered a host of infrastructure projects as part of our assistance, including road, hydropower station, and hospital, improving local people's livelihood and contributing to the country's social and economic advancement. China fully understands the current difficulties facing Sudan and will continue to help where we can through bilateral and multilateral channels. I would like to share with you 3 suggestions on how the international community can help Sudan overcome the difficulties. First, stronger coordination to deliver assistance pledges. China hopes that the G20 members can enhance coordination in implementing the G20's debt service suspension initiative. We hope that the IMF and World Bank will actively engage in drafting and implementing plans to help Sudan develop its economy. At the extraordinary China-Africa Summit on Solidarity Against COVID-19, President Xi Jinping announced that China will cancel the debt of relevant African countries, including Sudan, in the form of interest-free government loans that are due to mature by the end of 2020 within the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Framework. For those African countries that are hardest hit by the coronavirus and are under heavy financial stress, China will work with the global community to give them greater support to help them tide over the current difficulties. Second, more sustainable assistance through strengthening the internal driving forces of Sudan's economy. China calls for more international support for Sudan's economic development in the form of funds, technology, and training opportunities. We need to redouble the input in livelihood areas to significantly boost Sudan's development capacity. China will encourage businesses to invest in Sudan and expand cooperation with Sudan in agriculture and mining. Meanwhile, we also call for the rollback of unilateral sanctions on Sudan at an early date to remove hindrance to cooperation between Sudan and the rest of the international community. Third, more solid support for Sudan against COVID-19. As the virus is still spreading in Sudan, the international community needs to provide support to Sudan in containing the disease. Recently, Premier Li Keqiang spoke by phone with Prime Minister Hamdok, and the Chinese government and all sectors have donated a substantial amount of anti-epidemic supplies to Sudan.
Thank you.
The government also sent to Sudan an expert team of medical experts to share experience in fighting COVID-19. China will continue to help Sudan combat the virus and work with the global community to help Sudan secure an early victory against COVID-19.
Thank you, Special Representative there speaking through an interpreter in China. We thank you for your help. Please, could all our speakers really keep within time, because there's a whole load of you more, which is fantastic, but we need to get to all of you. The Foreign Minister of Turkey now, please, Mr. Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. Foreign Minister.
Thank you, Zeynep. Since the signing of the Constitutional Declaration of Sudan, the transitional government undertook the task of overseeing and the transition and the delivering service to brotherly Sudanese people. The impact of the pandemic obviously has created additional difficulties. Therefore, today's meeting is a good opportunity for renewing our commitment to the government and the people of Sudan. Demonstration of a good faith, inclusiveness, and genuine commitment by all parties is imperative for the democratic transition process. The swift conclusion of Sudan's peace process is also an essential part of the successful transition. Obviously, a smooth transition requires structural economic reforms. In fact, Sudan has what it takes for development and prosperity. Once mobilized, its rich natural and human resources, as well as agriculture capacity, could create rapid growth. This is where international support can make a difference. Lifting all unilateral sanctions will be an important step, and the lifting of sanctions, coupled with the structural reforms, would help Sudan integrate itself into the global economy. Dear colleagues, during the pandemic, Turkey has extended its helping hand and delivered medical supplies to Sudan. More aid is on the way. Turkey provided Sudan with more than $9 million for development projects and humanitarian aid in 2019 and 6.5 million already in 2020. And we will continue our ongoing projects in various fields ranging from agriculture to education and healthcare to banking. In response to the call of this conference, we will make additional cash and project-based donations. We are ready to streamline our support in the line with the priorities of the Sudanese government, and we are committed to stand by the people and the government of Sudan in this official transition process. Thank you very much, Zainab.
Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, thank you very much indeed for your continuing and amplified support for the Sudan there. It's now my pleasure to invite the Deputy Prime Minister in Belgium, Mr. Alexander De Croo. Please, if you could give us your statement pledging support. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. It is clear to us that the setup in September of last year of the new Sudanese government filled both the international partners and the people of Sudan with great hope and great expectations. Clearly, there are some important challenges which remain on the path of inclusive political and economic reforms, installing new value chains, sustaining anti-corruption efforts, and dismantling the kleptocratic systems of the old regime. We welcome that Sudan and IMF staff have recently agreed on a staff monitor program agreement to monitor Khartoum's economic plans and to create opportunities for international financing and for investment. We also welcome that the peace talks in Juba will come to their final conclusions. Unfortunately, insecurity is still present in some parts of the countries, and in particular because of the presence of weapons in the hands of militia. We therefore welcome the extension of UNAMID's mission and the establishment of UNITAMS. As the international community has to act quickly to support these efforts in Sudan, we are glad to announce that as part of the Belgian response to COVID-19, we increased our participation in international humanitarian funds, which also channel support to Sudan. This includes a contribution of 22 million euros in 2020 to the Central Emergency and Response Fund of OCHA, which has allocated more than $99 million to Sudan to date. As part of the COVID-19 response, SURF allocated another $3.4 million to Sudan. Following up on previously provided untied government loans, which were 5 million euros, successfully installing 1,928 pumps for drinking water supply in remote places, we are also pleased to announce that Belgium has just approved a new application for 4.5 million euros for supply and installation of another 750 submersible pumps. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Deputy Prime Minister, and for reminding us about the importance of peace going hand in hand with democratization and economic reform. Thank you so much indeed. Vice Minister Emanuela Del Rey in Italy. Over to you, please. Thank you, Vice Minister.
Thank you very much, Zaina. Dear Sudanese friends, dear international friends. Let me start by saying that Khartoum has always been a privileged partner for Italy. We are deeply engaged in Sudan, which I had the great pleasure and honor to visit at the beginning of March in my last official visit before the lockdown. Italy's development cooperation has continuously been operating in Sudan since 1980 in sectors such as health, food security, nutrition, education, economic development, social inclusion, and environment. Today, Italy is a proud and active member of the Group of Friends of Sudan, and together with other partners is giving its contribution to facilitate a prompt normalization of Sudan's relations with the international financial institutions. We have always sided with the Sudanese people, even in the most complex times. Nowadays, we keep siding with them by supporting the democratic transition and the economic reforms launched by PM Hamdok, including the program to mitigate their effect on vulnerable people. Such reforms are even more urgent at a time when the pandemic plague risks exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Our support to the Sudanese transition is also coherent with our common stabilization efforts in the Horn of Africa and in the Sahel, where I am convinced that Sudan can play a very important stabilizing role. In this vein, we acknowledge the recently issued US Department of State report outlining the pathway to finally remove Sudan from the list of sponsors of terrorism, which we consider an important step in the right direction. To support Khartoum's institutional and economic reforms, the international community's contribution is key. Italy is proud to join this concerted effort with a comprehensive pledge of 19 million euros that will fund new humanitarian and development activities, including support to the Sudan Family Support Program for the year 2020. We are willing to continue our multifaceted support to the country in the coming years. In the perspective of the enhancement of our long-lasting partnership with Khartoum, Italy intends to allocate in the coming years further resources for new initiatives in order to maintain and possibly increase the current level of yearly financial commitment. Development activities will mainly focus on strengthening resilience and inclusive sustainable agriculture development, on building youth inclusion, and on the economic empowerment and integration of persons with disabilities in the labor market. Concluding, dear friends, the increased humanitarian needs to the COVID-19 pandemic will be met with projects targeting the most vulnerable components of society to address food insecurity and lack of access to basic services. Thank you. Shukran.
Shukran jazilan. Thank you, Vice Minister Emanuela Del Rey. Good to see you. Thank you. If you could all please keep within the time. I know you're all very important people and it's wonderful to have you with us, but please do keep to the time. Foreign Minister in neighbouring South Sudan, Beatrice Khamis-Sawani Noah, please, if you could give us your brief remarks, please, in support of this conference. Thank you.
On behalf of the President of the Republic of South Sudan, His Excellency Salva Kiir, I convey sincere gratitude for the invitation to participate in this High-Level Sudan Partnership Conference. Permit me also to deliver this verbatim message from my President to His Excellency Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, the organizers of this conference and the participants. I quote, "The welfare of Sudan as a country is our welfare, because Sudan is our older brother or sister. Steps taken by Prime Minister Hamdok, we support. We do not want Sudan to slide back again to wars that have no meaning. We believe the current measures taken will bring peace to Sudan in general, in addition to our little mediation effort. We are complementary to one another." End of quote. It is in this spirit of solidarity that prompted His Excellency the President to appoint the South Sudan mediation team to mediate between the Transitional Government of the Sudan and the Sudan opposition parties. A process that has been endorsed by the AU, Peace and Security, IGAD, and the United Nations. South Sudan looks forward to the endorsement of the same and the resultant agreement between the parties by Germany and indeed the European Union at the end of the negotiations. I'm happy to report that the Sudan mediation process has yielded commendable results, culminating in the signing of a number of agreements and protocols. As this conference deliberates on support to Sudan, South Sudan would like to propose the inclusion of not only financial support, but also capacity building for Sudan and the parties to the negotiated agreement, so as to ensure that there will be development and dignified return of refugees and internally displaced persons, especially to Darfur, Ruba Mountains, and Bluna regions.
Thank you.
South Sudan has been one of the voices that has consistently called for debt relief for Sudan, and therefore fully supports any initiative aimed at strengthening Sudan economically, such as the Mutual Partnership Framework, as agreed during the Friends of Sudan meeting held in Paris in May 2020, as well as the convention of this partnership conference at the behest of Sudan, Germany, the EU, and the United Nations. Your Excellencies, South Sudan and Sudan share strategic infrastructural services at the borders, but also at Port Sudan. Therefore, improvements at the port would increase its capacity and efficacy. Moreover, diplomatically, our shared borders and other disputed areas, including Abyei, should, as a matter of principle, examined or visited in cooperation with the new civilian political leadership in Sudan. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, Foreign Minister. Sorry to hurry you on there. Okay, we can now go to Ms. Karina Gould, the Minister of International Development in Canada. Your brief remarks, please, Minister. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zainab. Canada has been truly inspired by the spirit of the people of Sudan and by the important strides to lay the foundation for a new Sudan, where respect for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law are central. We commend the transitional government for promoting diversity and inclusion, aiming at ensuring that women, youth, and civil society continue to play leadership roles in all facets of Sudan's transition. In that regard, we stress the importance of inclusiveness in the ongoing peace negotiations and urge all sides to strive to reach compromises necessary to achieve sustainable peace. Canada commends the many progressive reforms that Sudan is advancing, including the recent banning of female genital mutilation. Canada and Sudan are in the exciting process of revitalizing our relations, including a joint announcement of the mutual upgrading of our diplomatic representation to the ambassadorial level. I recently had the pleasure of communicating to Minister Abdallah the news that effective immediately, Canada will be re-establishing a bilateral development assistance program in Sudan with an initial allocation of $16 million. This is in addition to increasing our 2020 humanitarian assistance to $19 million and providing $900,000 for the Sudan Humanitarian Fund to respond to COVID-19. Together, this represents a more than doubling of our bilateral assistance. In the long term, though, Sudan's future will rely not only on aid, but on rebuilding its economy. Canada is committed to deepening commercial ties between our countries. And finally, we know that unlocking the resources of our international financial institutions is critical. So to help offset the economic pain, I am pleased to confirm Canada's intention to contribute $10 million to the Sudan Family Support Program. It has been a pleasure to see the international community come together today to express support for Sudan. Canada will continue to stand with Sudan as it pursues its peaceful transition towards a democratically elected civilian government. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gordon, for telling us about the strengthening in the bilateral relationship between Canada and Sudan. Thank you. I'd now like to go to Japan, to Mr. Suzuki Kaisuke, the State Minister. A lot of S's there. Thank you very much indeed, State Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to express our deep appreciation to Germany, EU, and the UN and Sudan for hosting this partnership conference. Japan's contribution to Sudan has aimed at improving humanitarian situation and promoting development in the country. From 2016 to 2019, Japan has provided grant assistance worth about $42 million for projects such as the construction of water treatment plant in Wild Nile State, and also provided humanitarian assistance worth about $54 million through international organizations. Today, it is my privilege to announce that Japan will provide Sudan with humanitarian assistance worth about $12.3 million in 2020, including the prompt response to the threats posed by COVID-19 and the desert locust outbreak. Just a day before yesterday, my government also announced to extend emergency grant aid for $4.5 million in response to the damage caused by desert locust in East Africa, including Sudan. Moreover, Japan is implementing technical cooperation projects run by JICA in the fields such as water management, vocational training, and agriculture, in which more than 5,000 Sudanese people participate. Japan believes that human resources development is one of the keys. Regarding debt relief, once Sudan met all the conditions, Japan will take the necessary steps to restore its debt sustainability in line with international common practice. In conclusion, Japan welcomes the historical transition Sudan experienced last year and the subsequent move toward the transition to civilian rule. We are ready to support Sudan so that it can overcome the various challenges together with our generous partners in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed for your support there from Japan. And now I go to Africa and to the Foreign Minister of South Africa, Dr. Naledi Pandor, for a statement in partnership with Sudan. Dr. Pandor.
Thank you very much, Zainab. Thank you for the opportunity, Prime Minister and Minister Haas. Thank you for inviting us, and dear colleagues. South Africa is honored to be part of this partnership forum. We admire Sudan and South Sudan for being countries on the African continent that have shown a concrete commitment to silencing the guns, the aspiration of Africa for 2020. And we hope that this peace and security and path to development will hold. And we truly admire the commitments made by Prime Minister Hamdok and his stewardship of the process of transition in Sudan. We are committed to walking the road of peace and development with Sudan, with its civil society organizations, with women, youth, and other institutions. Drawing on our own experience, we commit to provide health equipment to Sudan to help combat the terrible pandemic that all our countries are confronted by. Furthermore, we are honored to offer to the Transitional Government and the people of Sudan our own experience and expertise in South Africa of constitution making, reform, and transitional justice, with the intention of supporting Sudan's transition to an open and democratic society. Our government will identify high-profile individuals who played a key role in our transition to democracy, as well as experts in public service, in civil society, and in academia, to be available to Sudan as a resource along with the Sudanese people to draw upon their role in developing legislation which will support and underpin a sustainable democratic transition. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
For supporting that very important capacity building, which is all part of the big picture. To Finland now, your brief comments, please, the Foreign Minister, Pekka Haavisto. Thank you, Foreign Minister. Foreign Minister of Finland, Pekka Haavisto. Just give a second or two. Foreign Minister of Finland, are you there? Foreign Minister Haavisto? Perhaps we'll come back to Finland. Finland? No. Okay, let us go to Mr. Norway. Haavisto, Mr. Haavisto? No, okay. Let us go to Norway. Mr. Jens Frolic Holter, the State Secretary. Ah, we have got Finland. Okay, Finland. Thank you, Foreign Minister.
Okay, thank you, dear Zainab. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister Hamdok, dear friends and colleagues, thank you first for organizing this conference, and so good to have so many friends of Sudan online, and of course, best greetings also to people in Sudan who are following this important conference. There is a huge value of this political partnership, which we are launching today, and we think it's not only a one-time event, but a longer process. Finland remains strongly committed to support the transition and the people in Sudan. Peace and prosperity in Sudan remains our priority. This includes particularly the key role of women and youth. We have to listen to their voices like we listened to them during the change in 2019. Inclusivity is still the key issue of the transitional period. In addition to the EU support, Finland will pledge additional 2 million euros to humanitarian assistance and continue the climate resilience and weather forecast cooperation with Sudan, and also continue to support the UN Special Advisor Hayesom's important work in Sudan. Thank you. Shukran.
Shukran jazilan. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Well, let us now go to Norway, staying in your neighbourhood. Mr. Jens Frolic Holter, State Secretary. Your brief remarks, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dear friends of Sudan,
last year was historic. The revolution ended decades of authoritarian rule, and now Sudan is in a historic transition based on principles of freedom, peace, and justice. The Constitutional Declaration sets out the script for this transition. Deviation from the key elements of this script will undermine the will of the people. Norway endorses the partnership communique. Extensive reforms are necessary to lay the foundation for a more prosperous country. To support Sudan's transition, I'm pleased to announce a substantial increase in Norway's bilateral aid this year. This year, our total assistance will be around 270 million Norwegian kroner, that's almost $30 million US, which is more than 3 times higher than our total contribution last year. A substantial part of this, $10 million US, will be direct support to the family support program through the World Bank. In response to the global pandemic, Norway also provides substantial funding to global health and key humanitarian organizations, such as SURF, which provides large support to Sudan. We welcome the improvement in humanitarian access and the easing of bureaucratic restrictions. Economic transparency is of crucial importance for our continued development assistance. International aid cannot replace domestic resource mobilization. We are encouraged by reports that a program with the IMF will start soon, and this is a crucial step towards debt relief. The revolution created new opportunities to address root causes of conflict. We hope the ongoing peace negotiations in Juba will conclude without further delay, and Norway supports these efforts. Justice for victims require all parties to address transitional justice, and important for Norway, women's participation is decisive to achieve a sustainable peace. We continue to support the transitional government and the people of Sudan.
Thank you so much indeed, State Secretary, for spelling out there what the priorities are for Norway's assistance there. And Kalispera, now going to Greece, the Foreign Minister, Nikos Dendias. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Thank you, Zainab. Kalispera it is. Thank you. Would you allow me also to express our gratitude to HEICO and to Germany for organizing the conference, which is supported by the United Nations and the European Union. It comes at the right moment. The transitional government of Sudan can count on the political and financial support of the international community. Indeed, the August 17, 2019 agreement and the formation of the transitional government constitute positive steps towards the consolidation of peace and security, as well as the economic and social development of the country. In this regard, we support the efforts of the transitional government aiming at consolidating peace and security, respecting the rule of law and human rights, and promoting the social and economic reforms for the benefit of the Sudanese people. At this most challenging point for Sudan, Greece will be supporting the country with a symbolic contribution. Thank you so much, Lena.
Thank you so much indeed. There from Greece. We're going to have one more partnership statement, and then we'll just give you a brief pause with another video. So I'd like to go to Professor Jacek Czaputowicz, who is the Foreign Minister of Poland. Foreign Minister, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that Poland and Sudan enjoy strong ties of friendship and long-term cooperation. One example of this cooperation is our nearly 60 years long commitment to protect Sudan's cultural heritage. Poland fully understands Sudan's current situation. 30 years ago, we also faced the task of implementing political transition and building a democratic system and free market economy. The experience resulting from Polish presidency of the Sudan Sanctions Committee while performing the function of a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council gave us even deeper understanding of the scale of challenges faced by the new Sudanese authorities. For this reason, we support the reform program that the government of Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok and the Transitional Sovereign Council have launched for the benefit of the people of Sudan. We are aware that the successful implementation of the ambitious reform largely depends on the support and solidarity of Sudan's partners. Understanding that this is a turning point for Sudan and bearing in mind the size of the burden of the country has to tackle, I would like to stress Poland's willingness to settle Sudan's debt, which amounts to over $122 million on terms that will be favorable for Sudan and will foster the development of Polish-Sudanese economic and political relations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, Foreign Minister, and for reminding us that this is indeed a new chapter in the history of Sudan, and for reminding us about its rich cultural heritage, because of course it has a very ancient civilization which goes back, and I know that Poland has been very active in that area. Let's just press the pause button for a moment on our partnership statements. We have many more to come for you, but let's again just remind you about the people of Sudan, whose voice must also be included at this high-level meeting. So we'd like to bring you just again a brief selection of some Sudan voices. If we could play the video, thank you.
احنا بالنسبة لنا في الخدمة المدنية كان حلم بالنسبة لنا انه يكون في زيادة ورفع للمرتبات بهذه الصورة، ودي أسلقت صدرنا كثير جدا جدا، لأنه حسينا الآن إنه في ناس عارفين ومقدرين الجهد اللي بتقوم به الخدمة المدنية كلها. الخدمة المدنية كلها هي السودان، من أصغر موظف لأكبر موظف.
نحن النساء كان نصيبنا أكبر. سيادة النظام العام كانت بتنتظرنا في الشارع، بتمنع حريتنا، حرية لبسنا، وبتمنع حتى لقمتنا. بيعات الأطعمة كان كل يوم يتضربوا بسيادة النظام العام علشان يوفروا اللقمة والكرامة لأولادهم. سيادة قفة الملاح اللي كانت بتواجه ستات البيت كل يوم علشان يقدروا يوفروا الحد الأدنى لأولادهم. طول الوقت ده إحنا بنعاني من القهر والقمع، كنا مطمئنين إنه صوتنا واصل. حتى وين إحنا في بيوت الأشباح وبنتعذب كنا عارفين إنه نحن ما برانا، إنه في عالم بيسمعنا.
أعتقد أنه الدول الغربية والشرقية والآسيوية والإفريقية وسائر الدول قد أبدت بالحسن النوايا تجاه النظام الجديد، ما يؤكد أنه هذا التغيير لاقى قبول من جميع أنحاء العالم، وينعكس في الصورة بتاعت السودان اللي طرحها رئيس الوزراء في زيارته السابقة للأمم المتحدة، وما لقاه من ترحيب في أروقة الجمعية العامة وفي لقاءاته الثنائية مع مختلف الدول التي أجراها هناك أو لاحقاً من الخرطوم أو في زيارات قصيرة.
Veteran journalist there, Mahjoub Saleh, with his long overview, really welcoming, like so many other Sudanese citizens, the fact that Sudan has really been re-accepted into the international community again. So let us now return to our statements in partnership with Sudan at this conference. And we'd like to go to neighboring Egypt, Mr. Oussama Shaltout, the Assistant Foreign Minister. Assalamu alaikum, Assistant Minister.
Assalamu alaikum, Your Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me at the outset to emphasize the importance of convening this conference, which comes at a critical juncture in Sudan history, its transition into a democratic state. This conference is the latest to address Sudan current affairs. Previous events and conferences held by Friends of Sudan have aimed at laying the way forward and combating the challenges that the people of Sudan are facing. Egypt, as a strategic partner of Sudan, acknowledged the benchmark progress made by the transitional government in implementing the constitutional declaration signed last year. The challenges facing the government are daunting. At the top are economic and humanitarian challenges, a shrinking economy and persistent fiscal deficit, and barriers to financial assistance from international and bilateral donors. Outline the economic challenges. Furthermore, Sudan suffers a dire humanitarian situation which is aggravated by the global COVID-19 pandemic. Domestically, Egypt recommends strong social safety net to mitigate these challenges. Egypt also called the international and regional financial institutions to coordinate available economic support, which would allow Sudanese transitional government to identify and deliver projects with the near-term benefits for its people. In this respect, President El-Sisi expressed Egypt's support for lifting the sanction imposed in Sudan to enable Sudan for normalizing its relation with the international financial institution and paving the way for debt relief. Egypt's support and solidarity with Sudan and its people can be seen through its assistance in various forms, beginning with restoring its membership in the African Union last year, responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in May by shipping 40 tons of medical assistance. Egypt will continue its partnership with Sudan through mega projects, like the Electricity Interconnection Project, which was launched January 2020, with Egypt contributing roughly around $200 million. Additionally, Egypt and Sudan will establish a railway line to facilitate the movements of people and goods. Egypt also stands ready to increase its technical assistance and capacity building program provided for the Sudanese in all fields, and increase direct investment to Sudan that are currently amounts to $2.7 billion US. Last year, Egypt hosted a series of negotiations in order to facilitate a smooth political transition and to bring peace to conflict areas in Darfur, South Kordofan, and the Blue Nile. In this regard, Egypt will continue its effort in enabling Sudan to achieve a final peace deal according to the agreed matrix in Juba. To conclude, I would like to reaffirm Egypt's endless commitment to Sudan, its transitional government, and its people, and will continue to provide economic, medical, political, and humanitarian assistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Osama Shaltut. Thank you. And everybody who's yet to speak, we are absolutely delighted that everybody's involved in this partnership conference, and we love having your support, but please, we're running over. In the interest of time, please truncate and abbreviate your comments. And of course, this conference is in English. Let us go now to Qatar. Dr. Mutlaq Al-Katani, Special Envoy for the Foreign Minister. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you very much. Let me thank you, first of all, Zainab, for moderating this important conference. We appreciate you being patient with us. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you for the participant. And we participate in this conference in the support of the transitional government and to achieve free, just, and peaceful Sudan. The fact of the matter is that Sudan faces some challenges, which most of us, if not all of us, are aware of these challenges, mainly political and economic. We are ready to continue the support of Sudan economically and politically. So we look forward for further bilateral discussions between Doha and Khartoum to materialize these supports and efforts. Peace process also faces some challenges. We are ready to play a more proactive role with our friends, partners, and other stakeholders to support Juba process. And thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the coming meetings on Sudan.
Thank you so much indeed, the Special Envoy for the Foreign Minister of Qatar. And now we go to Malta. Mr. Evarist Bartolo, the Foreign Minister of Malta. We look forward to
Thank you, Zina. Malta welcomes the Sudan Partnership Conference. Stability in Sudan remains crucial for stability in the region of the Horn of Africa and beyond. Malta supports the political transition in Sudan, as we believe that this represents a historic opportunity to achieve peace, democracy, and economic recovery. Malta welcomes the progress made by Sudan in order to enforce its border security as well as counter terrorism, amongst other priorities. Malta, within the European Union, will keep supporting Sudan to take the crucial reforms needed, also to remove the country from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Malta also supports efforts to provide solutions for indebted countries in order to assist them in reducing their debt burden and embark upon a path of sustainable and inclusive growth. We welcome the efforts of the IFIs, such as the IMF, World Bank, and the African Development Bank, to create an environment which is conducive to embarking upon the necessary reforms in Sudan. The humanitarian situation, further aggravated more recently by the COVID-19 pandemic, remains an increasing concern. We underline the necessity for all stakeholders to respect the international humanitarian law and ensure safe and unhindered humanitarian access throughout Sudan. Malta also highlights the importance of civil society involvement as well as citizen participation mechanisms to develop the role of women and youth in this transition. Finally, we hope that the desired objectives, both political and economic, are reached and that the solutions are put together in order to help mitigate the dire situation in Sudan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, Malta. Thank you there. We're now going to go to the regional groupings Executive Secretary of IGAD, and that's Workney Gebeyehu. Thank you very much indeed. IGAD.
Thank you, Zain. Thank you so much, Prime Minister Hamdok, dear colleagues. I want to express my sincere appreciation to all the friends of Sudan, drawing from all corners of the international community who have convened here today. Your support comes at a very critical juncture for Sudan as a member state and chair of IGAD. And is a clear indication that you have once more embraced Sudan in the community of nations after a long period of challenges. On behalf of IGAD, I extend the warmest congratulations to the people and the government of Sudan for the enormous strides they have made in the re-engaging as a body politic and undertaking far-reaching reforms that are paving the pathway to democracy and firmly putting the feet of the country on the road to economic recovery, lasting peace, and long-term stability. At IGAD, we are proud to have elected Sudan as our chair, and we are pleased that the international community has picked up on this signal of confidence that our member states have in Sudan. IGAD pleased to fully support to the transitional government of Sudan in the ongoing effort to re-establish the inclusive political system after years of 31 years. Vigilance is our watchword, and it is the price that we all must pay for the liberation to come at the end of 27 months between now and November 2022. When the transition period ends and the general election ends. This is because there are many obstacles that must be overcome and many adversaries of change that must be persuaded to join the transition.
Thank you.
To our international partners, I say that investment in Sudan now is an investment in the future. It is investment in greater stability of the IGAD region and 270 million citizens. It is an investment in the three pillars of Sudanese transformation, that is freedom, peace, and justice. Thank you, Zainab.
So much indeed. Sorry to cut you short, but we've got more speakers yet, and thank you. And Sudan welcomes its chairmanship of IGAD. Let us now go to the Republic of Ireland and Mr. Kieran Cannon, Minister of State. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Excellencies and friends. I thank all of those involved in convening this extremely timely event. Sudan is at a critical juncture. The transitional government under Prime Minister Hamdok's leadership is embarking on an ambitious reform programme to foster peace, foster security and economic growth. And I'm conscious that, like so many other places, COVID-19 adds to the complexities which must be navigated if those reforms are to be achieved, and they must be achieved. Today is a very important collective expression of support for your efforts to deliver on that promise of transition. There are obstacles to be navigated, including those in accessing finance, and Ireland fully supports the EU's advocacy efforts in this regard. This year, Ireland has already exceeded our commitment at the January pledging conference, having provided €3.7 million in humanitarian assistance to Sudan. Ireland is also amongst the top 10 contributors to the UN's Central Emergency Response Fund, of which Sudan is a top recipient so far this year. Today, I'm pleased to announce Ireland's contribution of $500,000 to the World Bank Trust Fund for Sudan for social protection cash transfers to the most vulnerable families. Social protection has taken on a new importance since the arrival of the pandemic. And with Team Europe, Ireland will continue to stand in solidarity with Sudan during your transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister, and for pledging your support there to the Trust Fund. Thank you. Let us now go to Switzerland and Dr. Christina Mary Lang, State Secretary. Your brief remarks, please, in support of our partnership conference. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Sudan needs our support. The transition of the country is in a key phase. Important changes and economic reforms are on the way, fundamental freedoms have been strengthened, and comprehensive peace negotiations are happening. However, the transitional government is facing enormous challenges, in particular regarding the economic situation. Therefore, We very much welcome this conference in order to bring the international community together with the aim of assisting Sudan on its way to peace and prosperity. Switzerland has always been a friend of Sudan. We accompanied a series of mediation processes since the 1990s. A highlight was the negotiation and signing of the Nuba Mountains ceasefire agreement. Switzerland is proud to have served as a co-mediator and host these successful negotiations. Building on this relationship of mutual trust, we are happy to offer our specific expertise in peace building and in the support of political transitions, as we have done in the past. In this context, Switzerland therefore welcomes the decision to establish the new UN Transition Assistance Mission, UNITAMS. We are currently exploring how to best mobilize the peace-building instruments at our disposal. In addition, Switzerland has been providing humanitarian assistance in Sudan for over 2 decades with a yearly financial volume of around $10 million. The program has been continuously adapted to the prevailing needs. In the last couple of years, there has been a clear shift from short-term emergency aid to more sustainable assistance. The humanitarian engagement of Switzerland will continue beyond this year with a yearly contribution of $10 million. In addition, Switzerland considers the possibility to strengthen its presence on medium term with development cooperation investments in clearly defined fields of common interest. When we talk about supporting Sudan, we also have to talk about international financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, and the African Development Bank. Normalizing its standing with these institutions is a key step towards sustainable recovery and lasting prosperity for the people and government of Sudan. Switzerland fully supports the establishment of a re-engagement roadmap. Switzerland also stands ready to use its voice in the boards to support Sudan's process towards orderly areas clearance and debt relief within the conditions of these processes and as a part of the long-term development strategy for the country. We're equally ready to support the constructive approach of the World Bank in providing transitional support through areas clearance grants in line with the requirements of these instruments. Thank you very much.
So much indeed. Christina Marti from Switzerland there. Thank you so much indeed. And just to remind everybody, we've still got 7 or 8 people who are to speak. So I would really appreciate it, with all respect, if you could abbreviate your comments. Ahmed Osman, Director for the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. Your brief remarks of support, please. Thank you. Ahmed Osman. Just wait for the line to come up from Ahmed Osman, Director of the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. Are you on the line? There's always a little bit of a lag with these big conferences going on, places all over the world. Ahmed Osman, are you there, or I will come back to you shortly? One more time, Ahmed Osman. All right, while we are trying to raise him, let us go. Again, brief remarks of support, if you wouldn't mind. Mr. Musa Hassan Salah, Director of the Islamic Development Bank. Please, your brief statement in this partnership with Sudan. Hello, Musa Hassan Salah. So, no response.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much. I was muted. I would like to begin by thanking His Excellency Prime Minister Hamdok and the Minister Al-Badawi of Minister of Finance and the German government for organizing this important conference. The President of the Islamic Development Bank unfortunately could not make it to this meeting himself. He expresses his apologies, but wishes well for the conference. He asked me to read his statement on his behalf.
Okay, I hope it's quite not too long. Thank you.
No. It's going to be very, very short. Yes, the Islamic Development Bank is particularly pleased to be at this conference and to reaffirm its support for the government of Sudan. In fact, Sudan is a founding member of the Islamic Development Bank, and the bank has never abandoned Sudan despite all the challenges, based on its principles. Since inception, the Islamic Development Bank has invested $1.7 billion in Sudan, and its current portfolio stands to $626 million. With the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is experiencing a very serious economic crisis as well as health crisis. This requires commitment from everybody, and the Islamic Development Bank is highly committed for that. To help deal with the health and socioeconomic impact of COVID in Sudan, the IDB Group commits $35.5 million for the year 2020 to support the Sudanese government. And the Islamic Development Bank Group also is committed and willing to collaborate with the international community and other development partners and the private sector and philanthropists to foster partnership and cooperation to support the socioeconomic development in Sudan. We are with Sudan all along, and I will continue to support them as the years go by. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, and greetings from the conference to the director, and thank you for your warm words of support, very critical there from the Islamic Development Bank. We can now go to Ahmed Usman, Director of the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. Thank you. Hello, Ahmed Usman, thank you. I'm hoping we have the Arab Fund there for Economic and Social Development. Maybe a slight problem with the connection. Just a couple more seconds. Okay, we'll come back to you, sir. I don't know if you can hear me, but we can't hear you nor see you just for the time being. At least I can't. So let us go to Estonia. Some brief remarks from Paul Tisalu, who is the Deputy Foreign Minister of Estonia.
Excellencies, dear friends, I would like to begin by congratulating the people and the authorities of Republic of Sudan on the progress already made towards a historic transition. Estonia fully supports the goals of achieving democracy, peace and prosperity in Sudan. There are no easy tasks to achieve, and I am delighted to see that the international community is recognizing Sudan's efforts and showing its support for the political transition. On this note, I would like to thank the organizers for hosting the conference. The economic situation in Sudan is extremely challenging and further amplified by COVID-19. Recognizing the need for global response, Estonia will make a financial contribution to enhance Sudan's capacity to deal with immediate humanitarian challenges. Economic hardship can be overcome. There are many examples of successful reforms available. Among others, Estonia is there for Sudan to share our reform and transition experience. To lead a country towards economic recovery, it is crucial Sudan being fully integrated into the global economy. For that purpose, we appreciate the ongoing diplomatic efforts in removing Sudan from the US list of state-sponsored terrorism. The expectation of Sudanese people are high and the will is there. I wish Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and his team strength and persistency to overcome this critical period. And I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. A voice there from Estonia, the Deputy Foreign Minister. Let's just try the Arab Fund again. Ahmed Usman, are you there? Ahmed Usman, Director of the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Good. Your brief remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start first to congratulate you for successful management of this big conference. I think you have achieved a very good achievement to your country in the first place. As Sudanese, I congratulate you for this. I would like to extend my gratitude and thanks to the Ministry, to the government of Sudan and the government of the Federal Republic of Germany for the invitation to this important gathering. The Arab Fund for decades has been always supporting Sudan, in spite of the difficulties that we met with the governments, previous governments, in fulfilling their obligations towards the Arab Fund. Until now, I think we have provided over $7 billion during the last 10 years. Now we have still and unused resources, reaching about $700 million for projects which are still waiting for to be implemented, basically in the agriculture and the irrigation, the generation of the electricity. Now we are ready to pledge, in addition to what we have now, we are ready to declare pledging $1 billion for 5 years. That is $200 million a year for the coming 5 years. And we feel that the priority should be given to the projects of agriculture, irrigation, water supply, and infrastructure in the transport. We feel that the infrastructure is a basic requirement for the development in Sudan. We have been continuously working in this direction, and we will still continue with this government and wish success to her.
Thank you so much indeed, Ahmed Osman, and for reminding us about the importance of agricultural development, of course, in an economy which is as agrarian as the one in Sudan is. Thank you so much indeed. Secretary of State in Portugal, Teresa Ribeiro, your partnership statement, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Briefly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dear Prime Minister Hamdok, which I had the pleasure to meet last year in Brussels, Ministers, Excellencies, Portugal welcomes this initiative and thanks Sudan's Transitional Government, Germany, the European Union and the United Nations for hosting this conference. Ensuring effective coordination amongst partners and stepping up our collective political commitment is both urgent and fundamental if we are to fulfill the legitimate aspirations of the Sudanese people. And this event is a clear demonstration of our global commitment to the Sudanese people. We reaffirm our support to the civilian-led transitional government and its ambitious economic reform program, critical to revamping the Sudanese economy and its finances, and by this means to promoting social development and inclusiveness. It's indeed necessary to ensure that the ongoing process of democratic transition becomes a success story for all Sudanese citizens and for the broader region. In order to fully realize this goal, the removal of Sudan from the state sponsors of terrorism list will be crucial to unlock the urgently needed access to foreign investment.
Thank you.
Portugal will continue to work within the EU and in other international fora to reinforce the political, financial and technical support to help Sudan overcome its precarious economic situation. We are also actively supporting EU's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we remain committed to ensure that Sudan will have access to all the necessary assistance on the health and humanitarian dimensions. Thank you very much.
Much indeed for telling us about your bilateral support, but also through the European Union. Thank you so much. Let us go now to the State Secretary Tone Kajer in Slovenia. Calling Slovenia.
Thank you very much. Slovenia is here. We are celebrating today our National Day, and we are really happy to participate in this very, very important event. So I would like to thank you and organizers for organizing this event, which is taking place at a decisive moment in the transitional process of Sudan. Slovenia is aware of the challenges faced by the Sudanese leadership in addressing the political, economic, and humanitarian situation in the country. And in this regard, I would like to take this opportunity and express Slovenia's support to the Prime Minister of Sudan, Abdullah Hamdok, and his government, of course. We welcome the comprehensive reform program aimed at alleviating the burdens of the past and achieving peace, freedom, and justice. We believe that the efforts made in the sphere of human rights and cooperation with the ICC are of the particular importance, being the best path to the lasting and resilient results. 30 years ago, as I mentioned, we are celebrating today our National Day. Slovenia went through its own process of democratic transition. Today we are a member and in the family of the European Union, so we understand many of the difficulties that the Sudanese people are coping with and are always willing to share our experiences and lessons learned. Our country has also provided its solidarity in practice. Ever since becoming a donor state 14 years ago, Slovenia and its people have provided aid to the people of Sudan, engaging particularly in Darfur. Our recent efforts have focused on providing access to safe drinking water by setting up drilling rigs. Without water, there is no life, there is no food security. These are projects of a smaller scale, but they demonstrate a clear commitment to the people of Sudan. And today's event shows that this commitment is shared globally. And in this regard, we welcome all the deliverables of this conference, as well as the future steps of Sudan will take to become a success story. And we believe that this success will come. Thank you very much.
Indeed, and for highlighting the importance of justice. To the people of Slovenia on your National Day. Congratulations for that. Staying in Europe, we go to the Netherlands and the Vice Minister, Thies van der Plas. Thank you very much indeed, Vice Minister, your words of support. Thank you.
Prime Minister Hamdok, the Netherlands was, is and will remain a firm friend of Sudan. This year, we have already stepped up the Dutch bilateral assistance to 30 million euros. We know the needs are high, and we hope to be able to make another contribution later this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, oh, well, you win the prize for the briefest statement of support, but thank you very much indeed for your partnership. Staying again in Europe to the State Secretary, Cornel Faruta in Romania. Your brief remarks as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the opportunity. We believe that the transitional government of the Sudan has shown determination to change the course of the economic situation in the country by proposing a set of much-needed economic reforms. Romania will add its contribution to the efforts of the international community, especially in the fields of empowering young generations, with a keen interest in supporting the youth from Sudan in becoming future professionals and continuing a long-lasting policy towards investing in the professional formation of the African students. Romania stands ready to play its part in the Sudan's traditional process. Building on the solidarity shown under the Team Europe initiative, Romania has decided to significantly increase the number of scholarships awarded to Sudanese students for the 2020-2021 university year. Moreover, we are ready to engage with our partners in Sudan in order to find areas and domains of common interest in which the Romanian expertise and experience in transition could be of use to our Sudanese partners. A stable, secure, and prosperous Sudan is in the best interest of the Sudanese people, creating dividends also at the regional level. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much indeed. And the educational links there, excellent. So last but not least, in our partnership statements, we go to Andrea Metelko-Zombic in Croatia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellencies. It gives me a great pleasure to be with you here today and to support this conference, particularly in the time when Croatia holds the presidency of the European Union. Croatia firmly supports the new Sudanese civilian transition as both a historic opportunity for the country after many years of international isolation and a democratic and inclusive expression of the will of the people. The progress of Sudan is important for the country, the region, Africa, and beyond. And therefore, Croatia firmly supports the EU's engagement in addressing the exceptional social, economic, political challenges in Sudan and in implementing the necessary reforms. Allow me also to express our appreciation for Sudan's accommodating more than 2 million of internally displaced persons and helping them in these challenging and uncertain times. Croatia continues to support the development of Sudan through the European Development Fund and by our participation in the EU Trust Fund for Africa, particularly through an additional voluntary contribution for the Sahel and Lake Chad region. We really hope that the conference will bring valuable contribution and achieve the goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed there. The last voice there, speaking at this conference as a partnership statement, but we have, of course, many more friends and partners in Sudan to support it in its reformist agenda who've not spoken at this conference, but many people have, and I think it's a reflection of just how important the country is for the international community. Before I return to our two co-hosts at the end, I just want to bring you some more voices from Sudan. We've heard some of our speakers say about the importance of involving civil society, and let us not forget that it was civil society that brought about the revolution and ensured that it succeeded. And of course, as we know, sadly, hundreds paid with their lives for freedom, justice, and peace. So let us now hear some civil society voices.
نجاح الدعم الاقتصادي المقدم للسودان يتطلب في المقام الأول رفع كافة العقوبات الاقتصادية المفروضة على السودان.
بالنسبة للدعم الاقتصادي للسودان مهم جدا نركز على تمكين النساء الريفيات من المسألة بتاعت التدريب والتأهيل عشان بنساعدهم إنهم هم يكونوا بيساهموا في الاقتصاد القومي.
على المجتمع الدولي بقدر ما يدعم حكومتنا ويدي الثقة الكاملة في الحكومة الانتقالية أن يدعم منظمات المجتمع المدني حتى نتمكن من المشاركة الفعالة في تنمية السودان.
عشان نحقق الأهداف بتاعت التنمية المستدامة أن إحنا بننادي في المجتمع الدولي في إنه يكون عنده التزام بدعم طويل المدى ودعم مقدر عشان السودان يكمل مهمته في مسألة الرفاه الاقتصادي. بالضرورة في أموال وموارد مالية خرجت خارج السودان. بنطلب من المجتمع الدولي يساعدنا في أنه كيف تعود للسودان عشان تساعده في الرفاه الاقتصادي.
السودان في نقطة أن يكون أو لا يكون، وبالتالي مطلوب منه دعم سخي ومطلوب منه التزام ولفترات طويلة على أساس أن السودان يخرج من الحالة بتاعته الانتقالية دي إلى ديمقراطية، وديمقراطية تكون ناضجة ومستمرة.
So some voices there. You may have had some streaming issues where the picture froze, but I think you get the gist there of what civil society is thinking and saying and hoping for in Sudan. So it just remains for me really to close this conference by inviting our two co-hosts, the Foreign Minister of the Federal Republic of Germany, Heiko Maas, and the Prime Minister of Sudan, Abdullah Hamdok. So Foreign Minister Maas, first of all to you. So are you pleased with the response that you've heard from the international community, all sorts of pledges and assistances and messages of support? What do you think?
To be honest, I'm happy. I'm really happy about this afternoon. But first of all, Zainab, I would like to thank you for leading us through this conference. And believe me, I know how hard it is to ask ministers to be brief, but you did it, and you did it again and again, and I liked it again and again. Thank you. You did a great job. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really impressed by the overwhelming support that all of you have expressed to our Sudanese friends in this afternoon, and that was really a great afternoon for me. I see three big takeaways that could guide our way into the future. First, we have established a lasting political partnership, and that's great. This conference opened a new chapter in the cooperation between Sudan and the international community to rebuild the country. And second, we have addressed the urgent need of financial support in order to tackle the challenging economic and health crisis. Pledges totaling $1.8 billion were made today, with an important focus on the family support program, and in addition to further grants from the World Bank of up to $400 million. And let me say, wow, this is really great. Thank you for that. And let me add, the people of Sudan, they deserve it. And the third point, let me say, the door is open is opening for Sudan's reintegration into the international financial system. And that's important too. A number of delegations have announced their readiness to work toward debt relief. And I would like to commend the representatives of the IMF and the World Bank especially, and the African Development Bank for their constructive approach to the unique challenges facing in the transitional government. All of these results are also reflected in the joint communique which delegations have been invited to endorse. And it will be published right after this conference. And once again, really, because it was so great, I want to thank you all for your participation and for your strong support. And while we can be proud of the result, we cannot stop here at this moment. We should meet again in the framework of this partnership at the beginning of the next year, I think, to keep up the momentum, to increase our support, and to help Sudan turn his historic opportunity into an endless success story. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, Foreign Minister, and thank you for your warm words also. And now the final word goes to Abdullah Hamdok. Prime Minister Hamdok, a lot rests on your shoulders. The burden of expectations of the people of Sudan, I know, is something that you take very seriously. It keeps you up at night. Are you in any way, has your resolve been strengthened by what you have heard this afternoon, that you can try to realize and achieve the goals that you and your colleagues have set?
Zainab, thank you so much. I don't think I will find an expression or words to express this. We are extremely delighted, satisfied, and happy with this response. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all of you, all our partners and friends from the bilaterals, multilaterals, IFIs. I think the level of participation in this partnership conference is unprecedented. There are very rare occasions when you see the heads of the IMF, the World Bank, African Development Bank, senior ministers, but also I would like to recognize the presence among us of His Excellency, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia. I think this level really is unprecedented. Thank you so much. I've never seen a conference where you invited 40 countries, institutions, and they all show up. This, for us, express the high level of support by our partners and friends. That will go so well with the Sudanese people, who for 30 years belong to this. Thank you so much for coming to work with us. And today we witnessed the establishment of this partnership, which genuinely we would like to see it as mutual partnership that goes both ways, but it lays solid foundation for us moving forward. We would like to go together with our partners, hand in hand, in delivering for our people. I think we know so well holding this conference under the current global environment was a big challenge. For a very long period, the world has never witnessed such a challenge of a pandemic, COVID-19. But I think our delight is that the world came to work with us. And that is really unprecedented. We know for sure there's a lot of work to be done, but I think with this type of support by our partners, I guess our work is cut for us, and we will be very delighted to move this process forward. In closing, I would like to thank all the participants, thank our co-hosts, Germany, the EU and the United Nations, But I would like to thank you, Zainab, for skillfully steering this. This has been a very challenging process, spanning the globe without a hitch. Thank you so much. You made us proud. The daughter, as our Nigerian friend will say, is it the daughter of the soil or the son of the soil? Thank you very much, Zainab. Yes, my friend.
Prime Minister
I
Abdullah.
appreciate it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but Zainab, I think you made all of us proud, and I think the country will be very happy today, all of our people. I would also like to thank our secretariat, our organizers, our IT people for a job well done. This has not been an easy thing. Thank you so much. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And I won't say anything more except to say it's been my pleasure and privilege to navigate these choppy global waters. And I'm a captain of hope. And I thank you, and everybody wishes you, and me especially as a Sudanese, every success to ensure the people of Sudan get the peace and prosperity they deserve. We leave you with a montage of images of places and faces of Sudan, because there are some national press conferences that are taking place. But I thank you all for your involvement, and goodbye. Thank you. We can play the montage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.